The views and opinions expressed in the Love Lounge radio show do not necessarily reflect this listening platform or any other platform that the show is aired on. With that being said, let's talk. From the capital to the continent, if it's in the black community, it's in the Love Lounge. I'm your host, Jamal DJ One Love Muhammad, and welcome to the Love Lounge.
It's like showbiz.
We stay fly, no lie, and you know this. Hips and thighs, oh my, stay focused.
Yo, ballin'! What's up, y'all? This is the Love Lounge radio show hosted by yours truly, DJ One Love, broadcasting live on digitalanalogradio.com and Twitch TV/DJ One Love. And today is November 2nd, 2021, and it's election day in a lot of states across the country, so I hope people are out there getting out there and voting, especially in Virginia. Please do your thing, folks, like y'all did down in ATL in Georgia as well. Anyway, we're not going to talk about that right now because this is a different subject we're talking about today. Today, we're talking about race in sports. So shout out to my producers, DJ Jimmy Fingers and DJ Black Steel, who was out there actually helping with an election project today. So he's not in presence, but he is mentally and spiritually here. And shout out to the Twitch squad handled by the one and only Mod X, the moderator extraordinaire. As I said, today's topic is race in sports. And for today, I have a special guest that came on. I just invited him earlier, and I wasn't thinking about it. I should have done it yesterday, gave him a heads up. But we're going to give a big shout out to my cousin, Jason Russell, who is in the house. What up, Jay?
What's up, big cuz?
Glad to have you on finally.
Yeah.
Glad to have you on, man. So, Jason, tell the audience a little bit about yourself. And people that don't know, Jason is my first cousin, or mothers or sisters. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself. You know, where you from, where you went to high school, you went to college, and what you're doing now.
Yeah, I'm from Pittsburgh. First, this is definitely an honor to be on this. I've watched you, cuz, do the Love Lounge, and I've always wanted to be on it. I just always thought I was too young back then to do it.
No age limit.
Yeah, you was the oldest cousin. So, from Pittsburgh, went to Woodland Hills High School.
Woody High.
Well, at the time, it was a powerhouse football program, and I went off to college and at the University of Cincinnati. Clearly, I just saw the college football rankings. I didn't like what they did to us.
Where they put them? 3?
They put them at 6.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah.
Okay.
They
Anyway. Okay.
And after football, I found a new passion in comedy. I've done comedy for 12 years. Some people in DC might not recognize me. They might recognize the video I made. I made a video years ago. It's called Shit Bougie Black Girls Say. It was popular in the DC area. I remember that. So, but since then, I've just been doing comedy, you know, and running the flag football league here in Pittsburgh. So thanks for having me.
No doubt. Thanks for coming on. Also, we're joined by one of my regulars, my man Mike Bruin. What's up, Calvin?
Hey, how's it going?
All right. And also my man Demetrius, who's been with me since day one, pretty much. What's up? And hopefully we're waiting for some others to drop in. I think Dr. Agu is going to drop in as well. Anyhow, man, I want to talk about this subject because this is one that it's that time of the year when we have all the sports playing. So we have basketball that's just in full effect, the regular season. The NFL is already in full effect in mid-season. We have hockey going on. We have the World Series going on. So that's like the 4 top major sports that's happening all at one time. But we're also still here in America dealing with the fact that this is the United States of America that is, a racist country. That's what it is, and that's what it's going to be until things change. And that's why we do the show that we do to help change it. With that being said, I want to talk about the first question I'm going to ask everybody is, and we're going to start with you, Jason, first, and then we'll go with the rest of the crew. Why is racism so connected to sports? Why is it so connected to sports?
I've always, like I said, just for everybody watching, this is a very mature, very strong mental crew that you have and listeners. For people who I'm very new at, so I didn't know the questions
That's all
previously.
right.
So, but as far as race and sports, I mean, you just look at the history of this country, right? I was watching Colin Kaepernick's
Yes.
documentary, and there's always been that correlation between slave auctions and the combine, even with slaves. And I don't have a take on that, but as far as just like it always has been bigger, stronger, faster black men in this country were sold. Um, you're more productive. You could do more things and more beneficial for people to make money. And as time went on, um, even though they gave black men some opportunities in that sport, there's always there's no black owners in football.
Mm-hmm.
What they make compared to what the players make, is um, not even comparable. And the audience, right? This me and football specifically being the biggest sport in America, they boo you if you kneel for a flag. They boo you. They boo you. They boo you. But
But they
so,
want to see you
but
perform.
they want to see you perform.
Right.
So there's always been that aspect for me, even playing in football and in those arenas.
Yeah. Uh, Calvin, what's up, brother? Why is race so connected to sports to you, man?
I think in regards to sports, when you look at spaces that tend to be elevated or spaces that tend to be celebrated from a global standpoint, black people tend to not be a part of that conversation unless it's entertainment or unless it's sports. And so I think what happens is as black people elevate within the world of sports, there's that conversation of ownership, not of owning wealth, but more so owning the players or owning their ideas or owning, how they operate, mainly because when you're looking at sports tend to be a showcase of strength and agility and skill. And so when you have such exceptional athletes constantly dominating everything, I do feel that there is a conversation of inferiority complexes amongst a lot of white viewers, especially a lot of white men. It makes me think back to 1910 with the Jack Johnson, James
Mm-hmm.
Jeffries boxing match where, Johnson wins. And this is 1910. This is the peak of lynching in America post Civil War. And you end up having an entire well, not even a race riot. You have pretty much a racial attack where you
Right.
have 11, well, they think it's estimated to be 11 black people lynched, all because of a boxing match. And so, again, that conversation of feeling inferior when you see somebody who is black doing well in a space. So I think there's so many layers. I could talk all day on it, but I think a lot of it has to do with the conversation of wanting to own and be in charge of the movements of even the most athletic and exceptional individuals in the black collective by white individuals. And when that power is compromised, then you see the ugly side of America.
No doubt. Demetrius, what's your opinion on that? Why is racism so connected to sports?
Well, the famous quote of Jimmy the Greek in the '70s, where
Mm-hmm.
basically white folks just destroyed what career he had once he made that statement about why the black athlete is much more superior than all other athletes, and it was true. It may have been considered distasteful for a lot. NAACP, everybody came at me, but it was the truth. Um, Sports is the only thing, as a friend of mine always says, that is even. It's an even playing field. So because of that, you got to regulate. I hate this whole celebrating thing that they really up on, and I wish brothers would say something because we know what it's about. It's about regulating black men. Let's not get them. Let's not allow them to get out of hand. You know what I mean? Now, I could see the sport. I could see like the sportsmanship thing getting in people's face. I could see that, but the celebrating and stuff like that, I always looked at that as just a way to keep black men under control because we know that image spills out into the black community. And the last thing I'll say, when Icky Woods was doing the Icky Woods Shuffle,
Mm-hmm.
the reason why they allowed that was because the owner said his wife like seeing him do it. But back then, we talking like the '90s. They really frowned upon any type of showboat.
Right.
So it's one of those things where we can't do what you can do, so we're gonna regulate it. Even though we're making all the money, that's not enough. We got to also regulate, like the brother was saying, your physical movement and how you do it. So, and of course,
Excellent
I know we're
points.
gonna get deep with it. We're gonna get deep. We're gonna get deep
No,
with this.
we that's the whole point of it, man. This pool don't have a ground. We keep going as far as we go. Yeah, and I'm give my take on it. I think Dr. Agu is on as well, but I think, like you said, it's kind of like the great equalizer. But there's always been this, and rest in peace, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, because I'm reciting her. There's always been this fantasy of white people, white men wanting to be like black men, whether it's with sexually with the penises or the physical structure and everything, and them idolizing us. And this is one way that they could idolize us, but at the same time contain us, control us by as you all said, the ownership aspect of it. But there, Kaepernick is not the first person to bring up the similarities to the slave auction, to the NFL combines and everything. We've been talking about that for decades. A lot of the newer folks might not know that, but we've been talking about that back into the '90s. Dr. Wilson, Amos Wilson said it. Dr. Francis Chris Wilson, and many others have talked about that being the case and the similarities. But it's not just the NFL. It's boxing. You Mike, you brought up Jack Johnson, and I'm glad you brought him up because you talk about at a time where this is the early 1900s, early 1900s, and he's beating the crap out of white men. And then on top of that, he's dating white women. So that's like the triple no, the extra taboo on steroids. You beating up white men, beating them out, knocking them out. They can't even touch you, not even close. And then you taking the women, which is we know historically what that means and what that could lead to. Rest in peace, Emmett Till, and so many others on that situation. Dr. Agu, are you available? Before we go on to the next question, because I do want to hear a woman's take on this. The question I'm asking is, why is race so connected to sports?
Oh, sorry. So at the risk of repeating everything I said, I think everything has been said because I didn't hear everything. I think that just at the risk of sounding I'm pro-black, which I am, I think it just black people dominate in sports, right? And it's the amazing prowess that we see. It's an opportunity to be in awe of individuals, but then at the same time, there's this tension of, man, they're so much better, but then does that mean, and there's a tension in there. So I think it's hard to get away from us. I mean, I always say, anything that you let us in a little bit, we come in all the way. And so we really do, I don't want to say dominate, but you look at almost every sport, when you crack the door a little bit and give us one bat, okay, we'll take over. Give us one gym shoe, we take, so I think there is this awe. At the same time, there's fear, and it's all connected, right? So I think it's hard to disentangle it, but it is that there's a famous quote: "America loves Black culture," right? So America loves Black athletes, but don't love Black people. I think that's where we have the tension that goes on.
No doubt. And I think also in more modern times, the other issue with racism is that sports is such a financial lift for people, Black people in the inner cities. This is an opportunity for so many Black people, especially young Black men, to make a lot of money. I can't remember how many Black millionaires are athletes, but there's a whole lot of them that are athletes. And so this gives them an opportunity. So that becomes a threat as well. So you're already physically the dominant at the chain, at the top of the totem pole, and then they're giving you're making money too off of it, even though we know the owners make the most money. And that's something that we're just collectively starting to figure out as Black people, because we've always admired the players. Oh, you see how much money Shaq makes, you see how much money Iverson or Jordan or whoever it may be, LeBron or Barry Sanders, whoever it may be, how much, they got that huge contract. But it's like we really didn't think about, how much is the owner making if they can pay them that, and how much are the agents making? Because that's a whole nother subject that we don't even talk about, is the agents and that aspect of it, and why the majority of the agents are white, and I'm gonna be quite honest with you, a whole lot of them are Jewish. So we have to be honest about that aspect, because it goes into this same realm as entertainment, as Jason can tell you about. But there's that component of it in which it's like, well, they're getting an opportunity to make a lot of money. And so you do have a certain aspect of people out there in white America that are they're they're jealous, but at the same time they're admiring us as well. So you have that component of it. All right. This is the Love Lounge Radio, broadcasting live on digitalanalogradio.com and Twitch TV /DJ One Love. And today's topic is race in sports. And my special guest is Jason Russell, which is my first cousin. He's a former football player, Division I, played for Cincinnati Bearcats, and he also is a comedian and also a father and working and doing his thing. He's got the trifecta. He's got it all happening. So the next question I want to ask for you all is the Jackie Robinson effect, because that was huge, the Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier for all sports. It wasn't just baseball, but it was it was a staple for all sports. And I want your opinion. What did it mean for Jackie Robinson, not just to break the color barrier, but to break it and excel at what is called America's pastime, which is baseball? Let's go with you, Jason, first, and then we'll go with the rest of the panel.
I think Jackie Robinson, at that time, for him to be as good as he was is huge just in today's sports, right? Like, that's a groundbreaker as far as competition. There's a black man. Here's this black man. It's not like Jack Johnson, who was an individual sport. But this is a black man who's going into this white arena, white teammates, right? Still in the days of known and accepted racism, and to excel. It's too much correlation between that and today, right? Like, we don't get the same opportunities, or not even that. Like, they have that mean where we're both on two different tracks on the track, but the white person's track is clear, and then the black person has there's hurdles.
Right.
But yet we still excel. So it's almost just like that, blacks in America. They came to America, and we came over here, and we had to excel with just not being in a system that was created for us. Just with any black athlete. So I think him being the first, not only being the first, but being great at it, right? Like, there was a reason why if he was not good at the sport, I think that actually white people would have loved that. Actually, I actually think they'd have loved the fact that there's this black man coming in here and he's not good, and it's like, yeah, look, we told you we better than y'all. But no, not only was he good, the people that came after him just kept getting better and better and better and better. But they still won't, make baseball a black sport. It's kind of going away, but I just think he was a ground setter for all blacks in team sports, right? Like in a white America, where not only was he the first, but he was better than most of the people in that league.
Yeah. And I think the other thing about it, like I said, is that it was America's pastime and it's sacred ground for America. Because the irony of it is that Jackie Robinson came from the Negro Baseball League, which I've talked about on this show. I have my ties to my great grandfather on my father's side, with Josh Gibson. But Jackie was not the best player in the Negro Leagues. He was an up and comer. He was young, but you had the likes of Josh Gibson, Senior, Satchel Paige, Cool Papa Bell, and so many others that were already doing their thing. And they made sure that they did not pick the seasoned more experienced veterans to come, because then it would have really embarrassed her. Because can you imagine Satchel Paige goes into Major League Baseball at the age of 50 and throws like no hitters and stuff. So imagine when he was 25, he would have been embarrassing Ty Cobbs and Babe Ruth and people like that, or Josh Gibson, who still has the longest home run in out of Yankee Stadium and on record the most home runs of any slugger in professional baseball in the world. Imagine him tearing up all these records and everything. So they went and they got Jackie, and like I said, he was good, but he wasn't the best at that time. And so it was one of those things where, dang, just imagine if we would have brought all of them over here, it would have basically just eradicated, baseball as we know it, which is kind of where we are with the NBA today. But we ain't gonna talk about that until later. So, Calvin, let's go. Your opinion on the Jackie Robinson effect.
You pretty much summed up exactly what I was thinking. I also, when I look back, there was an assumption when you talk about the Negro Leagues, like white people weren't paying attention to what we were doing. So there was just this assumption that because it was black, it was less than. Because what makes it even more interesting is when you talk about the level of talent that existed in the Negro Leagues, and as some of them started to matriculate in Major League Baseball, people were in culture shock, because it's like, a lot of these players grew up in areas where they didn't even have a baseball field to play in. They were playing stickball, or you found whatever field you could play in and make it work. And it's like, wait, so y'all don't even have the resources to do this thing, and y'all gonna come over here and do it better than us? Absolutely not. And so I think you saw that kind of take place. I think even when you look at Jackie Robinson's transition into Major League Baseball and just pretty much the hell he had to go through just with the training camps. And it's so funny because that training camp was in Sanford, Florida, and we know what that place is famous for, Trayvon Martin. So I think with Jackie Robinson, it also opened another dialogue when it came to investors and execs that realized, okay, we got to stop sleeping on black folks because they give us a lot of money. So even though we don't really care for them or what it may mean for our league, if we get enough of them in there, people are going to come to the seats just to witness what's happening, not even to be a fan, but more so to be a spectator and hope that the person fails. So as he came into those games, those early games he was playing in, I mean, you had record attendance being broken, and it wasn't because people were there to support. They wanted to see the man fail. And so that pretty much opens the door for what happens later down the line. And when you're talking about the origins of why a lot of the major sports leagues pretty much brought black people in, it kind of stems from those early origins of like a Jackie Robinson transitioning into Major League Baseball.
Yeah. Demetrius?
Repeat the question again. I know you're talking about
the Jackie Robinson effect.
Yeah. So, I mean, we all know the main reason they brought Jackie Robinson in was to break up the Negro League.
Good point.
It's funny. I had never watched. Somebody had mentioned it on Facebook, and I watched it. But what's the movie with Richard Pryor and them?
For the Love of the Game, I think it is. Or I know what you're talking about.
It was the name. It was actually the name of the team.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
It was a great depiction of how they decided to start their own league. You looking it up too? How they decided to start their own league, and that was kind of what happened. I mean, they saw an opportunity to break up the Negro League, and they found someone, like you said, they were smart about it. They said they couldn't pick the best player because it would make them look terrible. The Mickey Mantles of the world and all of that. So they had to pick someone that was okay. He had an all-American smile. You know what I'm saying? Clean face brother.
Right.
Nice looking.
Ex-military.
Yeah, all of that. So they picked the right person. And of course, once they did that, for years we thought, the white man's ice is colder. And then it was all downhill for me.
No doubt. Dr. Agu?
Yeah, I think the Jackie Robinson effect. I think I remember reading the Jackie Robinson story and then watching the movie, and kind of like Obama, Jackie had to be the perfect person, right? So he had to not make waves, know to turn the other cheek. I mean, it's heartbreaking to watch the depiction and to read and then watch it, what he had to go through. And he's intentionally picked, not that he wasn't good. I mean, he was great. And it's always amazing when you say he was not even the best, right? And the intention behind, well, we got to pick one that, that will be okay, that won't do this, and we can spit on and he'll be okay with it, all this stuff. And so even with that, he had to, there's so much pressure riding on him. I don't know how he was able to perform in the games. That this, you have to be better at every time, you have to be perfect, or you will fail for the entire race, right? The first, and so I think that being said, what it did for Black people, because we talked about why white people went. For Black people, it was just a win, finally a win. We can actually be on the same field. And they would all go, right? Because they could see him win and strike out, basically hit a home run for whatever, white pitcher, et cetera. It did a lot for Black people as we struggled. We finally got one. And unfortunately, it did disseminate the Negro League. And it was the first step in that direction, and us dismantling, kind of like integration of the things that dismantle things that made us who we were and gave us the just the pride in things that we can go back and say, well, wow, was that a good thing or not, right? But at the time, and I still today, a sense of pride and just we just are as good and a lot of times better.
No doubt. Real quick, the name of the movie is the Bingo Long Traveling All Stars and Motor Kings, and that came out. What year was that? 1976, and that was
74.
based off of the Negro Leagues.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead,
Now,
Demetrius.
I was gonna say too, but the interesting part about the movie is they didn't start making the money until they started declining. I don't know if you're still familiar with the movie, but they started to clown around on the
Right. Yeah.
field with the white players and kind of a little buffoonish actually. But that's how they got the people in the stands. They kind of had to even dumb down themselves to make the white players feel comfortable enough to even play them, even though they could really just kick shit out of them if they wanted to. But they
Right.
kind of had to bring a little comedic vibe to it for it even to be acceptable.
Which is interesting considering where we are today. Um, this is the Love Lounge Radio Show, broadcasting live on digitalanalogradio.com and twitch.tv/DJ One Love. I'm your host, DJ One Love, and today we're talking about race and sports as our topic. And my special guest is Jason Russell, former Cincinnati Bearcat and Woodland Hills Wolverine, and currently comedian and father. And got him on my show, and he's my first cousin. And we're going to open up the phone lines right now on 202 930-3457, 202-930-3457. If you want to chime in, please do give us a call, and Jimmy Fingers will try to get you in there. Speaking of baseball, because this is the other aspect of it, and we'll just go through this real quick. The Babe Ruth versus Hank Aaron and Barry Bonds effect, because baseball has several records that are just like cherished, and they're the holy grails. And the number one was Babe Ruth's home run record. And when Hank Aaron's broke that thing, we just heard recently all the stories when Hank Aaron just passed away, rest in peace. But there was all these threats and everything before he did, threats on his life, and a lot of folks was upset, of course. And then when Barry Bonds came along, then it was a whole nother level, because then all of a sudden it's a steroids issue in baseball, but it wasn't one with Jose Canseco or Mike Schmidt or any of the other players was doing the needle and everything. But then when Barry Bonds threatens that record, Jason, what is your opinion on that?
Well, I always said baseball, if they had a problem with Barry Bonds taking steroids, then they should give all that money back that they made off of Barry Bonds when he was selling out crowds every day. You can't. Can you dig it? Yeah, like you can't sit here and say, yo, you like you're bad for baseball, but yet all that money we made putting you on TV and selling out arenas is good. Like that don't make sense to me. So with that, I already see that problem. Babe Ruth, obviously a different era. But he's a hero. He's a hero to America. He's like their last hope of that when it was ours. And because of that, they'll never let Hank Aaron or Barry Bonds ever be recognized as the greats, because it's past theirs now. So because Babe Ruth was the guy when it was theirs, they'll always try to hold on like Elvis, right? They'll always try to make it, this is ours. This is back when it was pure. in that.
Yeah, no doubt. Uh, Michael.
Yeah, and I think even with that, when you look at just even the records that were held, it wasn't even that they just broke the record, but it's like they broke it in clean house. Because Babe Ruth had 714 home runs. Hank Aaron finishes with 755, and then Barry Bonds is 762. So it's like it wasn't even close.
Wasn't even close.
And I kind of want to go back to a point Dr. Agu made earlier when we were talking about the Negro Leagues and how as black players shifted into Major League Baseball, the Negro Leagues disappeared. You can have that same conversation with HBCU sports programs, where once colleges became integrated, the reason why so many of these major Division I schools have such multi-million-dollar, close to billion-dollar programs is because they got all of the athletes that would have gone to HBCUs had we not been allowed to go to those institutions. And so you see things get grandfathered in and wealth, compound upon the interest of the success that took place between 1954 and about 2000. And so now when you look at what happens with HBCU sports programs in comparison to a lot of these major institutions that they have so much just in the sports program that can cover tuition for some of their full student bodies. And so it just goes to show that, again, sometimes the urge to want to assimilate into certain spaces will come at the detriment of the collective in certain instances.
Yeah, excellent point. No, you know what? I gotta give you one.
Can you dig it?
That because I forgot about that. Bringing that up in that if you look back in, like, let's say in the 60s and the 70s at the a number of HBCU players in the NFL that excelled and went to the Hall of Fame. Just on my home team, the Pittsburgh Steelers alone, there was so many star players and Hall of Famers that went to HBCUs, and and as what you just spoke of, how that changed with the breakdown and desegregation and allowing the black players to come in, how important that was. Demetrius, real quick, go ahead on that Babe Ruth versus Barry Bonds and Hank Aaron.
I mean, again, like the brother said, and even Mark McGuire, because Barry Bonds and Mark McGuire were neck and neck at that time, but then Barry Bonds just pulled away. And they was bringing up the steroids issue also with around that time. And a lot of the white players, as we always known, have taken steroids. I mean, to get that edge, especially, over black players, in my opinion. But yeah, when you look at even the way they pitched the ball back in the times of Babe Ruth, as well as to Barry Bonds and Hank Aaron. It was a total different. They was trying to take those guys' heads off, crowding. God forbid if you crowd the plate or whatever. It was a lot. It was much difficult. It was more difficult. I mean, for them to break a lot of those records. And then, like you was talking about earlier, the pressure that these guys was under. I know baseball isn't as glorified like basketball and football. But you go in those stadiums and you hear the crowd, white folks, especially at that time, they saying some of the craziest things, man. And they real about it. That movie with Wesley Snipes called The Fan, that's real. That's a movie or whatever, but these people get crazy. You know what I'm saying? Especially when you talk about teams like the more historical teams, like the Red Sox and the Yankees. Yo, your life can be on the line when you on those teams and things are not going right. The Chicago Cubs, that's another historical franchise. Shit, the Pittsburgh Pirates. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Another historical franchise. They had my man Clemente.
Yes.
Yeah. So
rest in peace. Yes.
Yeah, no doubt. So they dealt with some things with that as well. Then you had Barry Bonds, and you had Barry Bonds, and you had Bobby Bonilla.
Yes.
So, and these guys were sluggers. They was handling business back then. And then you also have the historical context that started to happen with King Griffey Jr., King Griffey Sr., Barry Bonds' father. So you started to see Bobby Bonds, you started to see that because you could start so young in baseball, 17. Yeah. So you started to see that happening. So when you start seeing things like that, which they weren't able to do because of, the lack of talent, just to be honest, you don't really see the Abbott brothers might have been one of the last families that was in baseball It was a lot of them in baseball, but you don't really see the second generations like you've even seen with the black players.
Yeah, no doubt. Dr. Aggo, you want to respond?
Yeah, no, I think it ties to your first question, right? It's essentially is just that, why is race and sports so tied together? And there is that it is a race, right? At the end of the day, so which is superior, and I think there's a bit of that. Just why people are cheering for one versus the other, and that's where you get the power of the asterisk. So it doesn't matter what you do, there's always going to be Hank Aaron and the asterisk, which is why he can't be directly compared to
Right.
Babe Ruth. So he's going to be different. And there's so many in the open era for Venus and Serena in this, and that's why you can't. It's not directly comparable. So that person still is great, right? And that's why it is. It's to maintain that we still are. It goes back to white supremacy and all that stuff. I mean, I think you have to connect the dots.
So let's switch over to the Olympics. All right. Because we're moving along with this whole show, and we got a lot more to talk about. You got the 1936 Olympics with Jesse Owens and that encounter with Adolf Hitler, and then the irony of that is him and Hitler not wanting to shake his hand and everything. But then Jesse Owens comes back to America in 1936, and you're dealing with lynchings, you're dealing with racism and oppression as a black person. But you go over to Germany and you expect that in a Nazi era, but then to come back and you're dealing with the same crap. And then you also have the iconic 68 Olympics with John Carlos and Tommy Smith and the raising of the fist, that situation. Jason, what impact did the Olympics and race have on America?
It just shows how the amount of power America's portrayal and of black people affect us around the country. Like, I never forget playing football, my football team in college. We went to Hawaii, and Hawaii is a big, tourist place. And I didn't get it at the time, but halfway through my time there, I started figuring out. We would walk down the street. There'd be about 4 of us on a football team walking down to the mall. There would be a group of tourists from China. Probably about 8 of them. When they saw us 4 black people walking down the street, they ran across the street.
Wow.
Or the next time, if they happened to not, if there was another group that happened to catch us late, the husbands would hurry up and huddle up and cover up their wives from us. And
Jeez.
at that time, I was like, man, I hate Hawaii. But then I forgot about it. I said, these are tourists. This is how they see us. This is how we're portrayed by America to the rest of the world. And when you have people like that with Jesse Owens, it doesn't matter what we do. In a lot of these countries back then, they look at us as how the American people see us. And that's how I say about that. Like, it's just how it is. I witnessed that firsthand. And so I just feel like Jesse Owens just being superior like that, and that iconic Olympics where he was destroying. I forget how many goals he won. I don't even remember how many he won at that time. But I just remember. Yeah, I just remember he was destroying everybody at that, and to still be disrespected there, and to come back and not be treated any better just shows that just perception, how we're looked at across the country in a world.
Demetrius?
Yeah, so when you look at the Olympics, I mean, it's just an African American ass kicking worldwide, that we get to be able to do. And it pisses a lot of people off.
Yeah.
And we talking about even back then, it was just mainly like track and field. It wasn't like, martial arts, like how they robbed the dude this fast.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't even a lot of that, going on. At least it got publicized. I don't know all the games that took place back in that time. But it just further showed that, one, black people are human. We're not animals, even though they try to compare us to that because of our ability to win, and run and all of that. But to me, it's just kind of like it just showed us in a positive light. And it showed us to the world in a positive light, And even though Hitler said the things that he said, sports have definitely broke down a lot of color barriers. You know what I mean? Because it brings people from all, colors and races, into the locker rooms, especially football being a 60-man plus sport. And I
Right.
used to live in Hawaii as a child, and I want to say quiet as kept. Hawaii is an extremely racist place. It
Mm.
wasn't just the tourists. I can tell you that.
Mm.
The locals, and I'm not gonna call another person of color racist, but the way they were programmed, you know what I mean? They'll call you a nigga quick, and
Yeah.
not the nigga that you love, but the nigga you love to hate.
Right.
And I got called nigga many times
Yeah.
over there. So yeah, that's a whole nother subject for our sports, even over in Hawaii. It's interesting.
Not
But
to even, I'm sorry, but to cut you off, but not to even at that time, you're right. Like there is this beef with a lot of the Samoans and the because we got in a fight on the
yes,
football field.
yes, because
Yeah,
who did y'all play? Y'all didn't play Hawaii?
We played University of Hawaii.
Y'all
And
played were they the Rainbows then? How long ago
they're
was
the
it?
Rainbows. This is 2002.
Okay, I mean I was there now. Yeah. So yeah, so you have you have the military bases over there. So you have that whole thing with black men and their women,
Right.
and so that's where a lot of that derives from. To be honest, with you. Now, quiet as kept. Hawaii is a big football state, or
Yeah.
how to say, and I'm telling you, I played sport. The talent over there is really low key. People don't really know how much talent is over there. Them
Mm-hmm.
guys are talent. Basketball, not so much because of height and all of that, but football, yeah. And you see it throughout the NFL. You see sprinkles of it.
Yeah.
But if they was to really tap into that market, which like BYU taps into that market a little bit, of course, Hawaii, Nevada, they kind of stay on the West Coast. They tap into that because a lot of Samoans,
Right.
they're
Yeah.
actually big people.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the Pacific Islanders, period. So, but Jason, real quick, the fight. What was the cause of the fight? You remember?
I do. I mean, you can actually watch it on YouTube. Cincinnati versus Hawaii fight. It was just a tough game. It was a close game. There was just a lot of tension, and there was a big fight that happened with like 19 seconds left, and it was so big to like fans were coming off the stands, and
I remember that.
yeah, and we were fighting. It was pretty rough, and they were fighting our fans, and actually we had a Samoan on our team who was fighting some of the Samoans on the team, and they didn't realize they was actually cousins until after the fight was over. They called just thought that they were related. But you're right, it was a lot of that, like he's talking about, like there was the struggle, like they felt like the history from what I was hearing from the people there is they didn't respect the black men because they felt like their struggle was worse than ours, and we're portrayed as really having a struggle. And the women there were very attracted to the black men, right? Like you go to the hotel when there's
Well, who's not? But
50 women in the lobby
right.
just waiting for you, and so there that aspect too, you're taking the Samoan women away from them. So yeah. Everything he said took me
And
right
and I was there from the 5th grade to the 8th grade, and I saw it.
Yeah.
That very thing. I saw it as a child because I was wild. I was out and about. I was everywhere, and I played sports. I saw it as a child. That was a thing, and I was saying it as you were saying. I already knew the fans came out because when I was a kid, if you fought one of them, the whole family would come up to the school and fight you.
Yeah.
So I already knew the fans came out there. That was nothing. The police ain't even try to stop them because they already know.
Yeah. So, just for the record, Jesse Owens in 1936 won 4 gold medals. So, real quick, Michael, the Olympics thing, and I also I really want to talk about the John Carlos and Tommy Smith situation in '68 with the raising of the fist at the podiums for their medal awards. But the impact on all of that.
Whole lot to say, but I'll keep it short. I think what made that so interesting was that Olympics, that was supposed to be how Hitler was supposed to showcase how they were the dominant
Exactly.
race in
Yes.
everything, superior genes, superior genetics. This was going to be the world stage of how they regulate, like to the point where, he was close to almost bankrupting the economy to set up everything in Berlin. So then for them to lose so badly, that was like literally triggered him. Just if anything, that made him madder. That's probably why he got more violent. But you do see a cycle of, when it comes to the Olympics, what I've always felt is once Black people started participating, the ante got higher each time. If you look at like gymnastics and you look at what they used to be able to do 50 years ago, especially like the white women, they would just run into a cartwheel and you silver medal. I'm like, that's it. You look at Simone Biles and all that, they got to do all kind of stuff. I didn't know the balance beam is only 4 inches wide. And I'm like, y'all doing all, like, that didn't even exist at the time. Back then, the balance beam was you walked and posed, and that was it. Or even with the ice skating. What's her name? I wrote it down. I have to make sure I get Shura Bonnerly. She was the Black figurine skater that did the backflip. And, they disqualified her. It's an illegal move. It's only illegal because can't nobody else do it. So, but it's just crazy. And like, I think somebody had mentioned how Jesse Owens wins all these awards and he gets back to America and he's treated like crap. It reminds me of, like, I don't know if you saw the story with the guy, Isaac Woodard, who was a World War II vet. He was on a bus, segregated bus, needed to use the bathroom. Bus driver pretty much told him, go sit back down, you Black, whatever. So he cussed the bus driver out. Bus driver, pulled over, used the payphone, called the police. When they got to the next station, police were waiting for him. They gouged the man's eyes out. It's so many layers to that story because it ties into a bunch of stuff in modern times. But it just goes to show, like, even when you're doing a service that makes America look great, they only support you while you're boosting their ego. But once the job is done, it's back to business as usual. And so it just goes to show, I think sometimes we have to get in the space of doing things for our own collective and maybe not always the accolades of America, because America only loves our talent. They don't really love us. They would rather somebody else break those records. They'll clap because America won some gold medals, but they'd rather have somebody else who looks like them do it.
No doubt. Dr. Agu.
No, I mean, all that Calvin Michael said, I mean, exactly right. I mean, I think, when you look at the footage from the Olympics and Hitler's face and his mustache is practically flopping because he's so mad. And Jesse Owens was just the most calm, and he's smiling and he's running, kicking butt. It was it's just amazing. But we talk about Jesse, but there were other Black athletes. I think the first African American woman in the Olympics was there. I mean, so there was a showcase of Black athletes. But, I think Hitler showed his hand and we knew that. I think, Franklin Roosevelt never had him come to the White House. All these things. I mean, we don't focus on what happened. It's not Jesse. He started sitting in the back of the bus. Every other Olympic athlete got to the White House, right? And till this day, Jesse Owens never went there. So I think, to me, it was a slap in the face. And to underscore what Calvin said, we have to stop. And the Olympics are the Olympics. And it's a stage to just say, you know what? I'm the best. You throw it on the gauntlet and you keep going. But there is this constant, we need validation. We need, see, we're better. See, and the goalpost just keeps moving whenever it's for us. I mean, Simone Biles is a perfect example. I loved watching Sona Bannerly. I think I said her name right. She was, and you could see her get broken every time she'd get on the ice. She'd do this amazing thing of like 4. You know what I mean? They would constantly just belittle her, everything from, how we look and our uniforms. It's always something to beat. And the resiliency to rise. Imagine Jesse Owens probably got no support to do what he was doing. He just did it to just, I'm going to do it and show you what's great. He was not necessarily going to be a hero, and he knew that, right? It's this tension. So he did whatever for Hitler, but he was, even more vilified, to be honest, coming back home without getting the honor and the glory. So you're absolutely right. We have to do it for us, but it is amazing to watch those videos and the pride that, I feel even this day watching Jesse Owens just give the middle finger to Hitler and the rest of them. It's still amazing.
Yeah. And, they weren't getting any likes, so, what about, what about Tommy Smith and John Carlos, in that era? And also at that time, you're talking about Muhammad Ali. At the time was Cassius Clay and so forth not going. And then you had Lou Alcindor becomes Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Jason, what did all of that mean to today's sports?
There wouldn't be the protest that they did. Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, Lou Alcindor, like John Carlos, and like that to me was the greatest protest. Right, because you were going to lose something. They lost stuff.
Yes.
Like, they lost. Like, that was real. I respect LeBron James. People gonna hate me.
I love LeBron.
I think LeBron's the best. I'm sorry. That's my guy.
I love him.
But his protest is very PG, because he can do that now. He can go up on the ESPYs and say something, that's harmless. It's not going to really affect his brand. It's not going to affect what those brothers did back in the day, what Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did back in the day, what John Carlos and them did back in the day. That was, you were taking a risk. Muhammad Ali lost his career and eventually had to get back. It went to those were to me like protests that once you kind of go that far into a protest, you made it easier for everybody else.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody ever will have any protest. You'll never see another protest like that ever again. You'll never see people potentially lose their career over protest based off of what they did back in the day and set that boundary. So I appreciate everything people do now for a protest. But when you look at it, there's no significant harm other than Kaepernick, but we know the reason for that. But there's no significant harm in what can happen when you're LeBron James, right? And you go up on the ESPYs and you say, you read the script, of what America should be. But those protests to me will always be the greatest protest for athletes. Just so we're clear, for in athletics, because of what was lost from a lot of those people who did those protests.
Dr. Agu?
Sorry. Yeah. No, I was trying to. I know he got stripped from his gold medal. I just couldn't remember when he got it back. Does anybody know the answer to that? When they got their medals back? No, John Carlos and
John Carlos.
Smith. I thought they got their medals taken away.
I think they did, but it wasn't until like about 2008 or something.
Like a long time.
Yeah,
I just didn't remember. I didn't know if any, it did back.
Decades later.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think even to this day, when I see footage, that black and white footage of the gloved fist going up, I get chills because what it meant for them to do that, to get to that stage and do that, and the risk they took, knowing that is true sacrifice. And I love LeBron, and I think we can compare and say it's apples, oranges, etc. But I think for today, LeBron has pushed the envelope in terms of, let's get back to talk about, the game was great. Let's talk about what happened, right? And knowing his worth and using that, I completely, not I'm in awe, but I constantly support him for that. A lot of people hate on LeBron. I love LeBron for putting his money where his mouth is and not being afraid to step in it. So I won't denigrate him from that. But I think for them, when you say sacrifice, it's multi-level, knowing what it meant, the endorsements, how much they may have lost, right? And they didn't care. And, the two of them, but also the dude from Australia who was with them talking about allies. I think Peter Norman or what have you. Right?
Yeah.
He too, because he also, I think he stripped of his Australian record, and he had true consequences for that. But when you talk about allyship, people are okay being your ally when they're not going to lose anything. He was an ally when he knew that it meant something and went on. And they, I think, were pallbearers at his funeral and all that stuff. They knew what that meant, and he knew what that meant. So I think that's a perfect example of saying, I'm going to put everything on the line for what I believe in. And to this day, I think that's probably the most iconic message of sports protests ever.
Yeah, and it's crazy because think about John Carlos and Tommy Smith. All they did was raise a fist. That's all they did was go like this, and all that backlash from that. Calvin.
And it was crazy with that too, especially even when, like, she brought up Peter Norman. When you look at the context of that Olympics, there was already a lot of smoke happening because it's well known that whatever city hosts an Olympics tends to lose money, and the working class demographics in that region tend to be displaced. So in Mexico City, a lot of people got pushed out in order for them to build the facilities, just like they did in Rio. And so you had that happening. Peter Norman catches a lot of the smoke mainly because it was like, you're bringing that conversation of racism over here to Australia. We don't want people to talk about us because we got a whole history with the indigenous people that were there. So look what you've done. Right. And it was so bad that even when they had the Olympics in Sydney in 2000, Peter Norman wasn't even invited. They were like, nope, you ain't coming over here. So the poor man died of a broken heart. I'm just like, geez.
Can you dig it?
God. But, going back to what you guys were saying, this is the beef I've always had with a lot of black athletes in America. It's like, y'all don't realize the power y'all have in numbers. There's not enough that have the courage to just like, it is what it is. Even when the whole conversation around the knee was really spinning, and you see some of the team on one knee, another person wasn't really sure, and another would just put his hand on the person's back that was on the ground. I was like, y'all, if all of y'all say we ain't playing, there's no NFL, there's no NBA. Like, come on. And so that just used to kill me, especially because these are these big old giant 6'5". Look, I'm 5'8", 150 pounds. Like, come on, y'all. So like that just used to kill me. But I understand, to be fair, there's a conversation when we talk about livelihood. For a lot of these athletes, this was their ticket out of poverty, and this is the ticket they have that they need in order to ensure that their family is well off. And that just highlights the fact that even climbing in America as a Black person, your integrity is on the line in conversation with your livelihood, depending on what it is that you do. So it just goes to show how many layers exist when we talk about race in America and how to matriculate.
No doubt, no doubt. Shout out to DJ Knowledge. Thanks for joining in. Demetrius, you're the last one on this particular subject.
Yeah, I'm sitting up here at this YouTube. I never knew about this black skater. I've been up here looking at this. I mean, it's crazy. I had no idea. Yeah. And then just how
With
black,
one leg.
how great she
Right.
looks, it's crazy. And she's a cutie, so it's like I know folks is like not feeling that. You know what I mean? It's a must. I want to go into that Nancy Kerrigan thing because it's like, yeah, but yeah. So what those brothers did, obviously, it was groundbreaking. I don't think that we can compare, and I like LeBron too. I just wouldn't compare what he's doing now. I think the brother just said it's not even a comparison. I personally feel that a lot of the things that LeBron James speaks on is sanctioned. White folks say this is okay to put the hood on. Matter of fact, we can put it on with you. You know what I mean? It's okay to open up the school. Matter of fact, we're going to give you the permits or whatever you need to do about it because we get that, like Mr. Fuller said, the cost of racism has went up. So we can't just not do things. We have to allow some things. If we don't, you might have a secret meeting and it could be a problem. So that's why I look at LeBron and them, and I appreciate because the things that he does say, he does catch slack for it. Let's be clear about it.
Shut up and dribble.
Shut up and dribble. He catches slack. So I'm not gonna just take it all away from him. It's just that it's a more safe environment to say certain things. Because when he had mentioned he want to stack money like Jews, they shut him up. So it's still it's still boundaries that even these guys know not to cross because what they saw Muhammad Ali go through. And because what they saw, I don't know the brothers' names, but the brothers that held the fist up during the Olympics.
Tommy Smith and John Carlos.
Tommy Smith and John Carlos?
Yes.
So seeing what those brothers went through, athletes don't want to go through that. And to be honest with you, when brothers get too political, I'm going to be honest with you, I prefer them not to. Get your bread and fund the people who really do that. Get that money. Fund the cats that really do politics, that's really about that revolutionary life. Back them up. You get the money. Don't jeopardize your money but for saying something that really is going to cost you more money than what you really said the effect of. You know what I mean? In my opinion.
I hear you on that. I think that the only thing is there has to be a balance. There has to be a certain amount that speak up like a LeBron. I hats off to LeBron. I'm not going to take away from LeBron what he's doing today because his predecessors paved the way. I'm not going to take that away from him. Hats off to him. And he has the money to do both. Some of the other cats, I get what you're saying, but the thing is they should learn from the Negro leagues, from the black football leagues, Fritz Pollard and all of them back then, their worth today, and as you all are saying that if they really understood their worth, and some of them are starting to get it now. Like there is no NBA without brothers. I mean, plain and simple. That's it. You ain't going back to them heydays and them white boys with the short shorts. That ain't happening. It's not happening. So they should understand how much power they have, and some of them are starting to get it. But at the same time, some of them need to speak up because unfortunately, we as black people are star stricken, and a lot of us won't listen to me. You know, I've been an activist since I was 15. They're not going to listen to me, but they'll listen to a LeBron or Kyrie or whoever else out there, any superstar, and that's fine with me. I get it. So that's why some of them do need to speak up, and some of them need to be, funneling that money. So speaking on that, let's talk about Kaepernick. Let's go there. And I'm watching the Kaepernick Netflix special. It is excellent. I'm really enjoying it. I just started watching it today, and I'm really enjoying it. But let's talk about Kaepernick, Jason. You play football. You understand that the environment. You understand being in them big giant stadiums, and then for him to do what he did, what is the effect of all of that?
I love what Kaepernick did. I actually love it. You're right. Like when you play football, when you play college football, and college football stadiums are generally bigger than NFL stadiums.
Right.
I played, Ohio State. That's 5,000 people you're in front of. And you play, and the audience. You know who you're out there performing for. And you know what they usually stand for.
Right.
And that's why I love what he did. I think that took guts. I think that to me was courageous to be out there and do that. Like Brother Calvin was saying about what he hit a lot of nerves with me when he was like good nerves. He was like, when we use you, and when they're done with you, they don't want you anymore. Mm-hmm. So like just with me personally in college football, I will never forget. I was a 3-year starter at the University of Cincinnati. I had all the top judges, prosecutors, lawyers in the city on cell phone. I would call them. I'll hang out. One wanted me to go out with his daughter. And I'll never forget, after my last game at Cincinnati, I called him the next day just to say, hey, I'm going back to Pittsburgh. He literally answered the phone and was like, who's this? Because I was done.
Right.
I was done. I was no longer of use to that city. And for people know that. A lot of the athletes know that. Kaepernick knows that. And that's why I think once you kind of put that in your head, like, these people don't care about me. They just care about what I can do. I think he realized that and didn't care about the backlash. And I think what he did was actually courageous, because you're actually going into an arena with people who don't think like how you think.
Right.
And to do that was amazing to me.
Wow. Yeah. That's deep. Calvin, Kaepernick.
What was interesting with all of that is that, Colin Kaepernick had been sitting down for a handful of games and nobody noticed. It wasn't until they asked him, how come you haven't been standing? And he said his reason why. That's when there was the firestorm. So it just goes to show, again, you bring race into the conversation. Oh, it's going down now. And so, and it goes back to what I was saying as far as just that conversation of thinking they own the players, and they politicized it. It started to be a thing, and even with the presidential campaign at the time. And what always gets me, I always go after Jerry Jones every time. But it's just that toes to the line bit I'll never live down, where it was like, okay, you know what? We understand that y'all don't like us taking a knee, so we'll just stay in the locker room and we'll come out afterwards. And Jerry Jones said, no, y'all not. Y'all going to be out here toes to the line. And then he had the one gesture where he was like, okay, I'll take a knee with y'all real quick. And so they just walk out. It's not even national anthem time. He comes, let's take a knee. Come on. All right, get out there and play. And I'm just like, so that's our fight, right? And so you get the symbolic gesture. I took a knee. Now y'all shut up and play. Like, that's the energy you keep getting. But I think to go even further, one of the things I've noticed within my own blog and stuff, especially if I talk about white privilege, the first thing I notice people always tend to bring up is black athletes in NFL and NBA, as if that's something that's chosen through affirmative action or, people feeling bad for black folks. I'm like, no, that's a conversation of just talent. Nobody's going to bypass all the talent to kind of keep people comfortable. And so I think with that, when it came to sports, because that is one of the things where, again, black people shine just so brightly, the only way you can regulate how they think and how they operate is to take away their means of commerce and wealth, or take away what it is that they do well. So let's vilify them and paint them out to be anti-American. They hate the troops and they hate this, that, and the third. And you could even have a conversation about the discrepancies when it comes to recruiting black youth for the military versus white youth, and then the conversation of wealthy versus poor. But all that goes out the window. Nobody cares about the troops. I'm like, y'all can save that speech,
Yeah,
especially
yeah,
after
just keep
January
track.
6th. I don't want to hear about it.
Yep.
So it just goes to show, like, people know how to play these different games. And so they've done that with Colin Kaepernick and made an example out of him. And I think the reason they went so hard against him was the fear of, if he does it, the rest are going to follow suit, which goes back to what I was saying about Black athletes recognizing how much pull and power they really do have. So let's make an example out of Kaepernick, because if one of them do that, imagine if all of them, or even if it's just one team, like, I don't know, it's the Seahawks decide we're gonna shake the table. That
Right.
starts a firestorm. So I think what they went so aggressive and so hard because they had to nip it in the bud before it could turn into anything else. So, or with LeBron, the same thing. When he speaks out, the first thing they do is bring up how much money he makes, or they'll go and attack the school that he opened and talk. I don't know, a cafeteria worker slipped and fell, so it's a headline. They'll find something to kind of diminish. Oh, let's talk about privilege, but LeBron James makes this much money. It's like,
Right,
all
yeah.
right, latch onto the exceptions then.
Demetrius.
Yeah, so the Kaepernick situation, I haven't watched it. I watched a little bit of the Netflix from what I saw. I like how they narrate. He's doing the narrating and applying the whole thing. I think that's creative. The thing with Kaepernick that makes him dangerous is that he's a mulatto. So he knows how white people think, and he also knows how Black people think.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes him dangerous. I think that for him, it was an opportunity. Not that he was an opportunist, but he just kind of, I think, with everything he went through, when this happened, and he looked at it, he just said, you know what, F it. I'm tired of this. I see both sides of it, and I'm gonna stand up for it. And I think that's the edge that he had, no different than Dak Prescott said being biracial gives him an advantage in blocking.
Mm-hmm.
Because he can talk to white players being white, half Black. It's Jason, right? Yeah, so what Jason was saying, I knew that's what he was gonna say, the white man, like that's the contrast again, even with Black players in college sports, especially the D1 schools. Your proximity to whiteness, not that you was trying to be white or nothing like that, but the understanding those connections that you had with whiteness. You understand what I'm saying? It can give you a false sense of like, a part of something.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then, so I knew where you was about to go with it. You know what I mean? And the thing about sports, only a few athletes really get to transcend past I'm Black. Like, I'm not Black, I'm OJ type of thing. Only a few that they allow to really do that, right? But you got to be on some like jumping out the damn stadium type of thing. But even still, you got an understanding of what even Kaepernick understands. But him actually being biracial, he gonna get a better understanding. But you being in those worlds, you got to see how things operate. Being around white people when you're successful, he was willing to give up his freaking daughter because she was an athlete.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? Those things go to people's heads, and they react in a certain way. And I think Kaepernick, with everything he went through, being biracial, seeing all this stuff going on, how he was raised and all of that, what was being depicted in the Netflix documentary, I just think he just said, bump it, man. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to stand up for something in a way that I was not able to speak up when I was a youngin' and nobody looked out for me, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to make a sacrifice right now, and I don't give a damn. And I think that's what he did.
Good point. Dr. Agu?
No, and I started watching the Netflix special as well. And I'd known he'd been raised by a white couple. But the way that he narrates basically his awakening, right, it is so powerful. And he connects it. He stops things and he's like, this circle, white privilege. And we with the parents, that were, they were so for their little Black son, but they never stood up for him, never defended him, never, it was like, yeah, well, you were being smart, Kat, you were, Colin, being smart. And he's like, I was being smart by saying I didn't do anything. I mean, it's really wonderful to watch him. And he's like, you know what? I think what went through his mind is like, if I don't actually use my platform now with the stage that I have, it's not going to matter. Because like Jason said, he was out of the league in whatever years, and that was an opportunity he lost. He made his money. He's smart. So he's like, you know what? I'm gonna stand up and continue to stand up by kneeling, right? And I think they thought that he was gonna go away because it's not the first time. I mean, Colin's brave, but there was, I forget the brother's name who kneeled before in the NBA. He's out.
Oh,
He like
Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf.
right, done,
Yes.
right? And so it's one after the other. And in fact, and Colin got money because basically they all banded together and decided they were not going to let him in. And so he was like, you know what, I'm gonna keep talking. And his connections, you know, whether we can talk about him being part of the white world, et cetera, he knew how to use what he needed to use to play their card because he was raised in that. He's like, I know how to play the game, and he continued to go no matter what. He didn't disappear. And I do wish more of the players had just said, you know, we too are going to take a knee. And it was this sort of like, we're going to kind of have take a knee. And it was like, well, the game can't go on if we don't actually all take it, if we don't all play. So we're all going to do it. And they can't silence us all. And I think Colin, you know, I've heard people say, he didn't do much. He did a lot. He never.
He did a whole lot.
He did a whole lot. And you know he did a lot because Annabelle had to come back and apologize to him when America was burning, right? Like, oh, well, we should have known. No, you knew it then. And you thought you could just isolate it and see he's one lone wolf and make him unpatriotic. And he fought despite that. And so I think he deserves every accolade he gets for what he did. Because I don't know that there were many that were willing to do what he did.
Yeah. So, real quick, station identification. This is the Love Lounge Radio Show, broadcasting live on digitalanalogradio.com, black-owned radio station, and doing our visuals on Twitch TV /DJ One Love. And that's me, your host. And today's topic is race and sports. And my special guest is Jason Russell, who is a former Cincinnati Bearcats football player and also comedian and also my first cousin. And we're talking about this whole situation about race, and we're talking about Colin Kaepernick. The phone lines are open, 202-930-3457, and Twitch Squad, yo, share your opinions, please do. Jason, let me ask you this, because the whole Kaepernick thing has set off a whole new direction or targeting at the NFL, which I don't think is accurate. And a lot of people, especially people that don't watch football much, are like, oh, let's boycott the NFL. And I'm like, okay, that sounds easy, but what about all the other players that are doing major stuff for the communities, you know, that play in the NFL? And it's not just the NFL. There's a lot of racism in the NBA, Major League Baseball, and other sports. And we already talked about the Olympics and so forth. But you played college football. You didn't get to play in the NFL. But do you see any difference between college football and the NFL when it comes to racism?
Yeah. I mean, like, I've always said this, especially with college, I think it starts to be very prevalent. Like, you see a lot of college athletes, black college, like we were talking about, most of the black athletes, the best athletes go to these, you know, white institutions instead of the HBCUs. And what else do you see? Because you see that now you see these the white students, the white girls at these students who would have never talked to Jerome at Shinley or at, you know, Homewood or, you know, the schools here. The parents wouldn't have accepted that. But because now you're here, now you can get access to these girls who wouldn't want nothing to do with you back where you're from. Right. But now you have status. Now you're not where you're from. You're the star, and they look at you differently. And they don't, like, a lot of the black athletes don't see that, where you're being kind of looked at differently than the people where you're from, because they look at you as you're better than, and they wait for you to make one mistake. And the first time you make one mistake, they're ready to pounce on you, because it's like they treat you almost like when a dog messes up and they say, oh, no, don't snap, don't bark at that person. Yeah. Well, dog, what do you want them to do? They're like they don't want you to be you, because they try to transform you into being into their groove. And I didn't realize that until I got out of college. So then when you go to the NFL, now here's athletes who, personally, I've said this to my friends all the time, I wish people couldn't go and make money until after they worked job for 3 years, right?
Yeah.
Because then you treat it differently. You treat the money differently. You treat
Right.
the approach differently. Your first job out of college as an athlete, a black athlete, is millions of dollars. Jamarcus Russell, they had to change the rule because of Marcus Russell, right?
Yeah.
$6 million
He messed
off
it
the
all
top.
up.
Yeah, he messed it up for everybody, right?
Yeah.
But then compared to the white college athlete, I've noticed they'll stay till their senior year because a lot of their parents don't need the money. Not all of them, but a
Right.
lot of the
A lot
parents are
of them.
like, nah, I don't need this. Johnny Manziel's dad owns an oil rig down there. I remember a guy from USC, the quarterback. I'll stay another year because, that's when I increase my draft stock. My family already has money. So
Yeah.
for them, they're already in a different situation where the black athlete, whether in college and NFL, are doing it for different reasons. And we can get caught up with thinking that people actually like us. And they don't like us. They don't like you as a person. That's why they'll always highlight when you do something good. Like,
Yeah.
oh, look at what Juju did. Juju went and paid for somebody's groceries at the grocery store. Isn't he amazing? We love Juju. But then let Juju go out there next week before a game and TikTok dance.
Right.
And then he has no catches,
Yeah.
right? Juju, you're horrible. Juju, it's like, hold on. What do
And
you
if you
like?
wasn't so busy
Like,
TikToking, you could
yeah.
catch the ball.
Yeah, because they feel like they wait for those moments
Right.
for you to come back to being what they think you are. And so, like in college and in NFL, college is worse, actually, I think, than the NFL. I actually think college is worse than
Me
the
too.
NFL. Yeah, I think college is 10 times worse than the NFL with players not really getting paid and coaches being paid millions of dollars to coach amateurs. I mean, I just think that's a crazy. And they changed some of the rules for college players to get paid, but they're not getting paid. So they act like they still can, like everything's fine. Well, yeah, look, they can get paid off their likeness. Well, only 2 players can paid off their likeness.
Right,
What about
yeah.
the other 102 on a team that's doing everything right? So college to me is worse than the NFL. NFL is a business, so I don't really, it is what it is, what you sign up for. But I just feel like college itself, I think, takes advantages of all athletes. I mean, a lot of the students in that won't even be able to go to the colleges that they lower the SAT scores. They lower the SAT scores in the past. I worked at a university for 13 years where you see the SAT scores of some of the, athletes that they let in. And it's like, this won't even get you into community college, and yet you're here. You're here.
Right.
They're
Right.
going to get you through. They don't care what you major in. They're going to get you in these classes just so you can get an A, just so you can pass.
Basket
So
weaving.
I went to University of Cincinnati. Melvin Levitt. Sorry, I gotta take some. Melvin Levitt, the levitator. They call him Levitation. Was one of the stars on the basketball team. And this is when Cincinnati was always a top number 1 seed in
They had Bob Huggins.
Bob Huggins was there.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I actually got in an argument with his daughter years after this.
Wow.
And I remember my freshman year in college, I was walking, I seen Melvin Levitt. He was a star on the basketball team, went to the NBA. I guess he's
I
in the
remember
NBA
him.
year. Yep. I said, Melvin Levitt, what you doing on campus? He said, I'm just here to graduate, trying to finish up some classes. He still needed 2 or 3 years worth of classes.
Jeez.
And this is before people was going, this is back in the Tim Duncan era where you went 4 years.
4 years, right.
Yeah. There's a wall on the basketball office at Cincinnati for everybody who graduated out of Bob Huggins' office. There was probably, in his 16 years, there's probably like 9 athletes.
God dang.
9.
He's pimping them.
Exactly. He
Pimping
makes
them.
millions. He makes millions.
Right.
Only 9. And the 9 that graduated, most of them didn't even play. They're like walk-ons. And so it's like you use the athlete in college. At least in the NFL, they pay you somewhat.
Right.
So it's like you sign up for this. College, you just get used.
So
I
let me
think
ask you this. All right. And I don't know if you all remember this, because when we're talking about race in sports and we're talking about college, there's 2 college games, both in football in one of them and basketball in one of them, that stick in my mind. So it was 1986 Penn State against Miami Hurricanes. That was Joe Paterno against Jimmy Johnson. Big stink about that whole thing because it was the Penn State Nittany Lions that were the clean cut, Joe Paterno good boys versus the I'm gonna just say, if I don't usually curse on my show, but the niggas from Miami Hurricanes, that Jimmy Johnson, they were all wild and everything. They came out with the camouflage on. I think was that Vinny Testaverde, I think was the quarterback at that time and everything. Y'all remember that game? How they put those two, and it was such a racially tense promotion. And the other one was UNLV versus Duke. And basketball, same thing. So if any of y'all remember that, because remember that was Larry Johnson and Stacey Augman and all of that against Christian Leitner, the perfect white boy, and what was Bobby Hurley? Because then they had Grant Hill and everything, who was as much as I like him, he was still clean cut, from Reston, Virginia, black kid versus the hood cats from Anderson Hunt and Greg Anthony and all that. That UNLV squad was like one of the greatest ever. But those two matchups there was so much racism in there between it was the black kids against the white kids with the clean black kids. The Calvin Michaels, do you remember any of that?
You got me beat on this one. I'm over here learning today.
Oh wow, okay. So Demetrius, you remember any of it?
Oh yeah, man, come on, man.
And I'll let Jason go after you. Go ahead, Demetrius.
Yeah, so back in that era, yeah. So basically, why they hated UNLV was because none of those guys were like 5-star recruits.
Right. They got the community college guys.
Yeah, they was just from the rough.
Yeah.
And then Tarkanian, he just was this hard nosed. He was kind of like excuse me. He was kind of like Bobby.
Bobby Knight,
the crazy white man in Indiana.
Bobby Knight.
He was kind of like Bobby Knight,
but
he was raw like that. So you had the shark. Then you had these players that were not even like on the radar. They wasn't top recruits or anything, and they did what they did in Las Vegas. So you got their whole that gambling mafia thing surrounding, what they had going on too. And I think they just hated it. I think they hated everything about it. And I mean, and Las
say, real quick, I wouldn't say, remember, because that UNLV squad had 4 players that went to the NBA.
Yes.
And they, like you said, they weren't the stereotypical pipeline of recruits, because like quite a few of them came from junior colleges, and then nobody's. It was like, where the heck is Tark the Shark getting these players that are coming out here and they're balling and they're blowing teams out by like 30 and 40 points? Basically, where are you getting these hood cats from? But go ahead, Demetrius.
Yeah, that's it. Because see, the thing about it is, like you said, Grant Hill, his people was professionals and all of that, and resting. It's fine if you have those Negroes, right? But these raw, uncut Negroes, kind of like with a Michigan, when they had the Fab Five, and even the Fab Five was a little, they gave them a little bit more pass.
Yes, they did.
With UNLV, it was just different, and UNLV, they dominated. See, Michigan never won.
Right.
So they could always kind of hang that on their head. But UNLV, they went 36-0. And even the one that they lost, it was a little controversy around the one that they did lose when they lost against Duke. So
right.
And they had to blow guys out. It couldn't be close at that time. Because it just, UNLV was not a basketball school at all, ever in history. Yeah. I don't think they ever historically before they had that squad. They didn't even give them squad. They didn't even have a name like you had the Fab Five. They was just, they was the running rebels, but they just was just some Negroes with a basketball. They hated them guys. They hated them. And I mean, they was going up against Arkansas. You had Todd Day. You had Oliver Miller. Right. They was going up against the top guy. I remember that, man.
I remember too.
I remember that. And being on the West Coast, because it was red, a lot of Bloods and stuff were wearing their colors too. That was
another part of it.
Little,
Yeah.
They
was associating them with the games.
Yeah.
They were associating them with the games. I remember that.
Yep.
And that's what I wanted to say because it was the same thing with Miami Hurricanes at that time too, and they was associating them young black boys with the gangs and the streets of Miami and the hood. And then, like I said, here you got Happy Valley, PA. Joe Paterno, legendary coach without a doubt, but he was always clean cut, them plain white uniforms. Jason knows all about that and everything. And so it was the clean kids against the bad kids. Jason, if you want to go some more on that.
Yeah. Well, even to that aspect, I just remember Notre Dame playing Miami, and they labeled that
Yes.
game Catholics versus Convicts, right? They
Woo,
labeled
yes.
that. And it's just the thing about the '90s. It's about UNLV. I just remember growing up in the '90s and marking up, going to Kennywood,
Yeah.
and it was that whole time they were like a culture set in the '90s for
Yep.
me. People just wore UNLV
Yes.
because what they represented. People always wanted to, and even the Fab Five.
Yeah.
But I just remember UNLV being that signature. Me growing up as a kid, you wore it for a different reason, right?
Yep.
Like you can't wear it because you like this. It was just what they represented. They represented that black team, those black players, and it was a fashion thing. It was more of a fashion statement in that '90 era. So I remember that more. Back then, I didn't know too much about college basketball. I just remember wearing UNLV clothes all the time.
And it's funny you brought that up, the clothing, because that was around the era at the time when NWA came out, Public Enemy was out. So so wearing certain jerseys and starter jackets and things like that made a statement about what you stood in life. So if you was wearing a UNLV, it was like you hood. Just like if you was wearing a Raiders jacket, you hood. It made a statement, about your mindset. And so you weren't wearing Duke like some of these youngins is doing today. If you wore Duke back then, you was getting an ass whooping. Let me just be honest with you. Demetrius, you from down in the Tidewater area, you was wearing Duke back then, you was soft. And I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that was the mentality back there. Jimmy Fingers, if you want to speak on this, you can definitely chime in on it because you remember that era back then as well.
Yeah, I just remember some of the things that people were saying about Larry Johnson.
Right.
Like, do they know his age for sure? He's older than he should be. I think he had the gold teeth already. I think he had 1 or 2 gold teeth already. So
yeah.
There was all types of questions of his intelligence, his criminal background. They were just coming up like, and dude was like 19, 20 years old playing ball. And that was one of the main things I remember about UNLV was no matter how well they beat somebody, how well they played, there was always questions about their background, where they came from, how they act in public, this, that, and the third. And the Fab Five got it too, but UNLV, like you said, got it much worse because they actually won.
Yeah.
Because they dominated the court. There had to be something about them that they had to detract. They had to try and put them in there, the media does, try to put them in their place. And a lot of times the questions came up as all they could do was play basketball. That's all they were. That's it. All they could do. They couldn't think for themselves. That's the way that they just projected the image of them. And I always remember, and I think it's because I'm dark skinned. I just like the way they talked about Larry Johnson. I was like, damn, really? Like, because I remember I used to really hear about him being a thug or something like this.
Yep.
When you heard him spoke, there was nothing that came out like that, but they immediately started to paint those narratives, and that actually started happening before they won. Like as they started showing their dominance, but before they won the first tourney or whatever, they were already painting those narratives.
Yeah, they was painting that picture.
It's just sad.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is, though.
No doubt. Hey, Jimmy Fingers, if you could bring up that video.
Mr. Tomlin?
Mike Tomlin. I want to switch back to the NFL. So,
grab that for you.
And this is not any slight to anybody else, but I'm from Pittsburgh. I represent my squad, and anybody from Pittsburgh knows, the terrible towel. I'm a Steelers fan. I don't hate against anybody other than the Ravens and the Patriots. And even with that, I got respect for the Ravens. The Patriots, they can eat, something else. That's because of the cheating thing. And that's nothing against people from Boston either, because I got good fan from Boston and everything. But I'm a Steelers fan, so I watched my Steelers faithfully. Don't miss any games. Understanding where the mentality of the city. The football team is a representation of the city, unlike other cities. Only other city that I know that is similar is Green Bay with the Packers in Milwaukee. But with that being said, I talked about racism in Pittsburgh plenty of times over the years on my show. Pittsburgh is a racist city, is very divided racially, just like Boston is very divided racially. And there's some cities down south that are very divided racially, but up north is Pittsburgh and Boston to me that have the most racism and division. So lately, there's been a whole lot of conversation about Mike Tomlin and his job and people hating on him, despite him being the third winningest coach in the last 14 years. And, percentage wise, and he has been to 2 Super Bowls, won one. He's already, if he was to never coach another game today, he'd be a Hall of Fame football coach. On top of that, he's a black man. On top of that, he's from the Tidewater area down there where Demetrius is from and everything. Good people, very intelligent man and everything. Is he perfect? No, and neither is anybody else. But recently there was this conversation and these rumors that went out because of Carson Palmer on a damn Patrick interview wanted Mike Tomlin, to be the coach for USC. Then all of a sudden these rumors come out that Mike Tomlin was leaving the Steelers, thinking about leaving the Steelers to become the coach at USC, and it got out of hand to the point where and Jimmy Fingers, let me know when you can load it up and everything. It got out of control. Now here it is. Pittsburgh Steelers have had 3 coaches, and this is relevant to everything we're talking about race in sports, right? They've had 3 coaches in the last 50 plus years, since the 60s. Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and now Mike Tomlin. And the irony of it with Mike Tomlin is, despite the fact that Pittsburgh as a city is extremely racist, the Rooney family is not the owners of the Pittsburgh Steelers. As a matter of fact, Dan Rooney was the one who requested to the NFL that they need to make a rule in which the NFL has to interview coach of color, whether black or Latino or Asian, whatever. They need to make that a rule that they should have the mandatory interview for any coaching vacancy, one coach of color, which was then now is known as the Rooney Rule. So that's from the Rooney family who owns the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we've got to put these things into proper context, because a lot of people, they say stuff out of the side of their mouth, and I'm looking at them like, y'all don't know what the hell you're talking about. So the Rooney family put that in. Dan Rooney, rest in peace, had that, the NFL put that into place, the Rooney Rule, which has helped to get a lot of black coaches interviewed. Now, how many have been hired? That's a whole different question, or subject. But a lot of them have had to be interviewed. And I think that's been about 16, 17 years now, Jason, the Rooney Rule?
2003, I think.
2003? Okay, so it's going on almost 20. That's 18 years. All right, so with that being said, and all this conversation about Mike Tomlin coaching the winningest football organization in the last 50 years, the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's the head coach. He's only the 3rd coach in the past 50 years, which is unbelievable in any sport that you've only had 3 coaches. When you see certain teams they'll have 3 coaches in 1 year sometimes, especially in the NBA. It's crazy. And in the end, he's winning. Okay. He's had, in the 14 years, they have won their division, the AFC North, 7 times. That's 50% of the time he has won. Okay. This is a black man that's intelligent, married to a black woman, committed to the community, does a lot of great things. I actually know his brother. His brother comes and watches the games with our Steeler group sometimes and everything here in DC. And these rumors started coming out that he was thinking about leaving the Steelers to coach a college team, USC, which is an amazing program, historically one of the greatest ever, and it put, I think some of the most players in the NFL, I think second only to Miami Hurricanes in the last 50 years. And so they're talking about him, doing this. Have you found it, Jimmy Fingers?
Yeah, I've got it. It's ready.
All right, load it up. So here's the Mike Tomlin's response to that, because he kept hearing these rumors. It was going on for about 2 weeks, and this is what he said.
Speculation. I mean, that's a joke to me.
Turn it up.
I got one of the best jobs in all of sport. Why would I have any interest in coaching college football. That'll be the last time that I address it. And not only today, but moving forward. Never say never, but never. Okay? Anybody else got any questions about any college jobs? There's not a booster with a big enough blank check. Anyone else? All right. Thank you. Anybody asking Sean Payton about that? You know, anybody asking Andy Reid about stuff like that?
I think that's the end of the video.
Yeah,
He
that's
stopped right
it.
there.
He got up and left after that. He's like, any more questions? No. So the point of it is for people that are listening that might not know all the context, Sean Payton, who's the coach of the New Orleans Saints, great organization, great coach. And then Andy Reid, who's the coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, another great organization, another great coach. Both of them have won one Super Bowl each. And Tomlin has won one Super Bowl. They're his peers. He has a better record than both of them, but the difference is they're both white. Okay. And so he's asking, anyone asking Andy Reid, would you take a college job when you are coaching one of the greatest sports organizations in period, not just football, but period in sports? Would you step down from that job when you are actually winning, have a better record than them, and go and coach a college team? So, Jason, what is your response to that?
First, Mike Tomlin actually was my coach in college. He was the one who recruited me to go to Cincinnati. He was my DB coach for my first year. Then he went to the NFL.
I didn't know that.
So, yeah, he was a Cincinnati guy. Got me to go there. Second, I feel like that just shows how arrogant college is more than anything. Like, that's how bad college has gotten. That's how much money is involved in college to the point where you would think that somebody that's the head coach of one of the most franchise teams in all of sports, right, would leave the Steelers to go to a college, right? To me, that's more of the arrogance of college. The money that's boosted in there. Now, as far as Pittsburgh fans, and you know this, so you know this, they've been wanting Mike Tomlin fired every year. All right, every year they want him fired. All right, every year he's horrible.
The white fans.
Yeah, he's horrible coach. He's this, he's that.
He got cowards players.
Yeah, it's cowards players. And this is for those who aren't from Pittsburgh who don't have the Black Pittsburgh community has to defend this every time. Right? Like every season he's horrible. But he's never had a losing season.
Not one losing season in 14 years.
The thing that changed, I wouldn't even say change their mind. The thing that you ever see that author meme where they got the fist right here like that, where it's down, was 2 years ago when Ben got hurt and he still went 8-8 with Mason Rudolph. They couldn't say anything.
Hodges.
Yeah, they couldn't, because now all the attention was how great of a coach Mike Tomlin was, and it made them mad. A lot of people weren't saying anything then, and they love to pile on Mike Tomlin. So it's like he's always fought wars, right, with the Steelers fans in the city who just think they know football. Everybody knows football, right? Everybody's a coach. Everybody's some scout. Everybody knows everything. And then for like Carson Palmer to say that about USC as if that's a better opportunity, right? Like there's like 2 or 3 black head coaches in the NFL, the highest level of sport that you can go in that profession. And you think that Mike Tomlin would actually be interested in leaving that to go down because now the arrogance of college football? Like you're not going to ask that to Belichick, right? Like Belichick, come on down to Pitt. Like that's not ever happening. That's not a vacation. That's not a retirement place. So I feel like there's 2 issues. One is Carson Palmer thinking college football and the arrogance of college football. I think that's one. I think college football is very arrogant now. I just think there's just too much money in college football to think that this is actually a better opportunity for somebody. The second thing I think is Mike Tomlin has had to deal with criticism since he's been in Pittsburgh. since he's been in Pittsburgh. He's been, and like I said, you know this. They've talked about him every season. Every season, it doesn't. You're right. It was Cowards players why he won. Right. It was always Cowards players. So like it's annoying to see, but we know. I mean, you know why this is happening.
Yeah, yeah, it has come out a whole lot more and more is recently. Dr. Agu.
Yeah, no, I what I love about his response is that, a lot of times, I mean, Black people, we face tons of microaggressions all the time. And in Carson Palmer's defense, he was asked, if he could pick any coach, he would pick, to coach USC. I think that's how Mike Tomlin came up. Not that he thought Mike Tomlin should demote and go to coach college football, just to make sure I put that in context. But oftentimes you face microaggressions, and this is, I would not even call it microaggression, it's a macroaggression, and you kind of deflect and whatever. I love that he looked everybody, the video froze, but if you haven't seen it, he looked at everybody in the eye, like, and he, right? Mike Tomlin I've never seen him. He can be firm, etc. I happen to watch a lot of Steelers stuff, but he was very direct, and he said what he had to say, and then he said, anybody else. And that was like, I wish you would. And you couldn't hear it in the video, but then the reporter goes, anybody else want to ask Mike Tomlin this question?
And then he was like, no, good. And he got up and walked away.
And dropped the mic and walked out. And I think you have to do that, and I love hearing it being discussed in different sports because he called it out. And by pulling up the white coaches, nothing against the white coaches, like, I got a better record, equal if not better record, and let me call you out for your race and why you have the nerve to ask me that, but you haven't asked even worse coaches than with my people not Hall of Fame coaches with my record. You haven't asked them that and call them out. And then it's like, oh yeah, why are we asking that? Right? Put the light on them. I love doing that. So I'm not sure. Why did you call me hey girlfriend? Why'd you feel like you could talk to me like that? You didn't ask for that. So when you put the mirror back and then they're like, oh crap. So I love his response. I love that he was firm. I love that he didn't shuck and smile and laugh at it or make a joke. It's not a joke. You attacked me, and let's call it an attack and treat it like an attack. And I dare you to say it again. I loved it.
Yeah, Calvin.
I always look at that as well as pretty much a way to get him out of there. Because let's be honest, college football coaching jobs don't last long. You get one bad season and they get you out of there. I'm like, I would never want to be a college coach because you get one bad. You don't even get a chance to build a team. It's like you don't get a transitionary year. Nothing. As soon as even if you make it to the end and lose, you still getting fired. So why give up such a secure? Because I think Tomlin's been there since 2007. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, leave me alone. So yeah, that just goes to show. And then the fact that, again, how Jason was talking about just that arrogance where, okay, we know you're doing all these great things over there, but you know what? We're trying to figure out our program. So you come on over here for a little bit. Let's see what we can do with you. And, let's just say USC doesn't work out. Where does he go after that? Right. So, man, yeah, get conversation of around like ownership again and thinking they own everybody. That happens with the coaches. And I always had to remind people, even when they bring up like Jay-Z, when he owned part of the Brooklyn Nets, I was like, I realize he owns like 0.02%, right? He don't even got enough say to say what color the jersey gonna be. But again, we'll let you in this space, but you're not gonna be able to do anything. That's that same kind of essence where, again, his tenure has been so long with that team. At this point, I guess up to like a few other people might have been in charge of the teams for just as long, but he's been there for such a long time. I think, again, that makes other people nervous as well. You want to get people that start to gain that kind of power out of there. That's what that's all about. So yeah, let's see if he'll take the money and run. Conversation of integrity versus wealth.
Yeah, and currently his tenure, so only coaches I think that are longer are Sean Payton and Bill Belichick. I mean, that speaks, volumes in itself. But he's got a better record than Sean Payton. And Bill Belichick has a better record than everybody, but that's a whole nother thing because they cheat. So, and I said it, and anybody don't like it, so what, kiss my ass, they cheat. Demetrius.
Yeah, pretty much with everything everybody else said. I mean, it's a bad deal to go to college because they're not going to give him a second chance back in the NFL like they do the Nick Sabans, like they do. I think Bill Belichick was in college for a while and he came back, right? Or was he ever in college? I know
Jimmy never in college.
Yeah, Jimmy Johnson.
Johnson, right?
Pete Carroll.
He was the one that I think went back and forth. I can't think of anybody else, but a couple of coaches got to go back and forth.
Yeah, there's a couple.
Tomlin, he's not going to be able to do that. Once
No.
they trick him out of his job, like the brother was just saying, he gonna get one season if that to try to win, and after that, he doesn't have he doesn't have the room to speak his mind the way he does in the NFL when questioned like that, because now you're talking about you're representing the school now. So it's certain things that you can't say that you can say in the NFL, right? So he has that to deal with.
Yeah.
It's just a different ball game. So I think he knows that. And I think that's the perspective he was speaking of. Like, y'all white folks really trying to trick me out of my job. And not Stephen A, but Shannon Sharp spoke on it.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't say, he wanted to say, you know why they asked him, and then Skip was like, yeah, they asked him because he's white, right? And yeah, because Shannon always go there on the race thing, so I guess he felt like, let me not say exactly, I'm not going to say it. But Skip went ahead and said it. That it was, it was because he was a black man. They played them games with him. So yeah, they tried to, trick him out of his job, but that's a bad idea. It's a bad, I'd rather get fired in the NFL than go to college.
But even in college, though, even if you win, they're still gonna fire you right after.
Yeah,
like they did that to LSU coach Ed Orgeron.
Exactly.
He just won,
yeah,
and they fired him 2 years later
in the middle of the season. Not even 2 years later, a year and a half later, they fired him after he had just won the NCAA championship for LSU. Orgeron is gone already. So why on earth would he step down from that to do that? And that's why he needed to talk to them in the manner that he did. He had to talk down to them, like I do to him. He had to talk down to them, and let them know, y'all are such petty idiots that I gotta say this to you this way. Don't ever come at me with this foolishness again, this insulting accusations ever again. And and hats off to him for doing that. I'm gonna go in another direction outside of the NFL. In recent situations, and this even just happened this week, I think, or over the past week, a lot of players have decided to not participate in their sport for mental health reasons. A lot of black players. So we had Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, and who was the player? Was it for the Falcons, the receiver?
Ridley.
Calvin Ridley. Yeah. Right. And I'm loving seeing that because there's so much pressure put on these black athletes to keep performing over and over and over again. And then you saw the backlash, especially if you catch any glimpse of Fox News for the Olympics, with Simone Biles, and then there was the sister that was doing the shot put, and she made a statement and everything. And then Naomi Osaka is like, look, I ain't feeling good. My head ain't right. I'm chilling. And then all these accusations and all these criticisms come from white America. Calvin, what's your opinion on it?
It's always noticeable, especially when it's black athletes that are women, how much more rage you see coming from white men. Like, I don't know if there's also another inferiority complex in that realm, but they already hate Serena Williams. They can't stand her. They can't wait for her to retire. And so when you saw how, like with Simone Biles with the Olympics, it turned into this whole, you let your whole country down. And I was like, really, this is what we're going to turn into? But okay. And I think with Simone Biles' situation, again, some of that stuff she's doing, nobody's ever done before. And her pretty much bringing up the point that this kind of stuff that she does, it's so dangerous if it's not performed successfully, where you can literally break your neck and die. And so the fact that black bodies are that exposable because we want a gold medal, it highlights the issue. Same with Naomi Osaka. Like Naomi, technically, she's more so, she plays in response in relation to Japan, but just that element of blackness is enough for people to still find something to hate about. Yes. So she's not even playing for the United States. They got an issue with it. But again, I think it's important that black athletes, yes, take your time for yourself, because again, we're only celebrated in positions of servitude. Like when we had that conversation earlier about proximity to whiteness, it's only in positions of servitude, only in a capacity where somebody white is going to gain something from whatever it is that you're doing. And so by black athletes taking charge and taking care of themselves, I just think that that helps in the long run for their mental, well-being and health later down the line when the sports world is over. Because I think when you get thrown into that pit of success within professional sports, yeah, it's a great time. Yeah, there's lots of money and everything is fine and dandy. But on that same side or in that same argument, you have tens of thousands of people who are rooting for you to fail every game you go to. You're constantly in the media. People are digging into your personal business. They want to find out that somebody in the family was a crackhead and they didn't found him, and now that person's doing a TV interview tell all because he pushed the kid off the bike when he was 6, and that got to be out there. And so they find everything. And then again, if you get into a space, especially with college as a black athlete, it's the be grateful you're here. There could have been somebody else, but since you're so talented but not intelligent, this is luck for you. So behave accordingly. So I think for black athletes to take those moments to make sure they're good, because it's your body that you're putting on the line anyway. When we get into that conversation of like CTE later down the line, or even the settlement that was given to the players that all had all those injuries, and they literally got pennies when you divide and do the numbers. Yeah. So again, it's important. Like once you're out, they don't care. Like it is what it is. You're not doing anything for them, so who cares? So I think while you're still at your best, make sure that you're good, so that when that time comes for you to find something else, or you retire or you stop, you still have an opportunity to do other things. Your brain isn't mashed potatoes at that point. So
yeah, Dr. Agu.
Yeah, no, I mean, I still remember what was the 88 or maybe 92 Olympics in Atlanta when the Carrie whatever did the flip with the broken ankle practically, and we're like, yay, go for her. She may have never walk right again, ankle twisted to the right, and we've moved on, right? And so if Simone had done her mind-bending flips or whatever and was in a collar on the floor, we'd for 2 seconds and move on. That's the rest of her life. So what I loved about what she did, her and Naomi, and is they said, you know what, I'm not going to do it. I don't have to do it. And then Naomi went and bought half of soccer team because I don't need you to do this, right? She really did. She's like a part owner of one of the female soccer team. They are owning their power and saying, with that, I'm going to demonstrate to the world that not just a physical injury, but a mental injury or not being at my best is actually critically important. Say to people at every level, if something happens to you, they name a doorknob after you and you keep it moving. We've got to move to a point where we take care of ourselves and defend that fearlessly. So I love what they've done. And even as people have come for them, it's like, I don't care. I'm going to keep moving. And I love that other athletes have galvanized around them. I think really critical to do. And I think we need more male athletes to do it too, because you're right, Calvin. It's amazing the comments on Naomi and just coming for them. Weak, my daughter had the twisties and she went through. I'm like, your daughter in the B-list league in junior high school does not compare to her being, on the stage.
World stage.
On the world stage, as if that's comparable, which just goes to show how dare you do something different than we want you to do. Screw you, move on, take care of yourself. So I love that.
Yeah, I got to give you this for bringing up Naomi buying half of that soccer team.
Can you dig it?
Yeah.
I was waiting. Calvin got all the diggits.
No, because I forgot that's she made that move. And and on top of that, both Naomi and Simone and the sister that was doing the shot putting, forgive me for forgetting her name, but they've made social justice stances as well and made it very clear where they stand on that, which is something that further irritates a lot of people, because especially with the white men, once again, it becomes a thing of ownership and thinking that they own you, and that if you play these sports, perform, that you're doing it for them. And I mean, you're talking about people that are sitting there in West Virginia and Arkansas in trailers that is acting like they own us. So on top of that, much love for them speaking out against racism and injustice. Demetrius.
Yeah, so I think that a lot of athletes, I wasn't aware the brothers from the Falcons they're doing the checks and balances and realizing that when you do the numbers, it's not even worth making this money and not having your sanity.
Right.
And what we don't know is a lot of the athletes behind the scenes. I had a buddy that played for Central Florida. He told me about some things that went on. It was another brother. I think he played for the Washington Huskies. He kind of had a mental breakdown himself. So it's a lot of athletes behind the scenes that have mental breakdowns that we hear nothing about because they're not the big names.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see that out from college all the way to the pros, you say, wait a minute, I need to do a little mental health checking. What kind of benefits do we have as with this union thing? I can take some mental health days off. Let me go ahead and utilize that instead of constantly being pushed, and pushed until you broke it, right? And a lot of athletes are realizing that, especially the ones like Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka, because they have a little bit more leverage because they got a couple of dollars. They can
Yeah.
kind of back off a little bit and say, "Hey, I need to take a break." And then this is the last one I make. Like we talked about this close proximity to white people. When you around white people like this, they will drive you insane.
Yes.
They can, and they can't call it that. They gotta call it. I need a mental health break. They can't call it white folks is driving me crazy. But that's
Right.
really what's going on. Tennis,
Yeah.
gymnastics, all the touchy feely that you got to deal with these damn trainers and doctors and all these people that's in, you know what I'm saying, that be going on that you can't speak on, even
Right.
though one doctor got convicted, all the hundreds of goddamn girls he was
Yes.
whatever for all the
Mm-hmm.
come on, man. So they got all kinds of things going on that they're not even speaking of. And then Naomi, she has to deal with the biracial aspect of it too.
Yeah.
So the sister just got a lot going on, and I'm glad that she had enough money and enough notoriety to be able to step away and still be straight and take care of herself instead of allowing them to use her as a machine. Because you gotta remember these are individual sports too, so they don't have the
Yeah.
camaraderie, like team sports have. They're out there all by themselves. Even Simone, she's out there by herself when she's performing, even though she has a team. But man, one thing about white women, when you can, man, you don't know what women the goddamn trip you. They do all kinds of shit to get, excuse me, to get leverage. I don't trust them. You know what I'm saying? So I feel that them sisters took a break, especially them sisters. Come on, man. That's
No
it.
doubt.
I
Yeah.
wonder if just, I mean, I think it's worth.
Go ahead, Dr. Agu.
Yeah, no, I think it's worth adding that Naomi actually tried. She asked to not. First, she said, "Can I not be part of these interviews that she had acknowledged and recognized were triggering for her?" And when you watch these interviews, they literally, you talk about macroaggressions. So, how were you feeling when you were broke down in the middle of it and you were losing, and they're waiting for you to break down? And she tried to pull back from that, and they told her, "No, you have to sit there and come and take the abuse that you know is gonna trigger you and break you down." She said, "I choose myself," right? And that's important to do. You've got to protect yourself. So I love that. But she tried to play the
And,
game, and it wouldn't let her.
and,
And you
and,
and
and
you and
hats
you
off to her because she had a lot of courage,
and
So
you
go.
and
Correct.
you know what why you right, and I never in a thousand years thought about that. So you have these reporters that are seasoned veterans, 20, 30 years on the beat, all
Right.
kinds of
Yeah.
things, all over. And now this girl is 20 years old and she's being questioned by I don't know how many people, Jason, you can speak to this, that's behind that camera. They flash it back there. It could be a room full of, depending on what it is, it could be maybe 50,
More than
60
50.
reporters from
Yeah.
all over the world. Talking,
Mm-hmm.
talking in your British accent. I mean, hey, well, why did you and all this and this and do this and that? And I'm like, hold on. You know what I'm saying? You got people coming at you like this, and then you like, wait a minute. I'm not feeling it. White folks got this little condescending way of asking questions and just playing a lot of mind games. So I'm glad that you said that, Doc, because that's important. Because they talk about media training, but that's just on how to answer the question. That's not how to mentally deal with these white folks coming at you playing mind games.
No doubt.
So yeah, that's real.
Dr. Agu, did you have a question for Jason?
You know what? I did. I was really struck with you talking about your experience being in Cincinnati and being under the lights, et cetera, and then how you call that coach the next day, and he almost didn't know you exist. And I wondered if you, while you were going through that, did you realize, the retrospective scope? Now you can say, "Oh, I recognize that," but I wonder for you, what that impact had for you at you're in the top and then you're not that you're at the bottom, but you're no longer there, and what that had impact on your mental health or just your self-esteem and resilience. I'm just curious if you could speak to that because it may give some insight into some of what these athletes experience and how that all plays in.
That is a great. I appreciate that question, Doctor. Um, so I actually have been writing down jotting down notes for a book that I've been trying to write, and a lot of athletes do it where they call it, some call it like it's pretty much life after sports. And my analogy was, it's like when you play, especially Division I sport, it's like they put you on this jet and you're on this class of G4 or whatever classified jet, and you're flying around the world, and you have the top everything. Like it's just lavish, and they're flying you around the country in this jet, and you're living a high life. And once it's that final year, you're still on the jet and you're still flying, but now you're flying over the ocean, right? Instead of flying from country to now you're just flying over the ocean. And when you're done, they just drop you off. And it's your job to swim and find yourself back on your feet. And I noticed that it hit me immediately when I called that lawyer when I was done. It hit me like that day. It didn't take me a long time to get over it, but I did deal with a lot of mental, physical, emotional depression for years, which is actually what got me into comedy, actually. Um, Trying to find your self worth. A lot of athletes do this. A lot of athletes try to find self worth
Yeah.
after you played this sport since you were like 7, and now you're 22, 23, and you're done. And for so long, you've had stuff happen, and people always, applauded you, but now nobody. Who are you now? Like, who are you? And so a lot of athletes deal with that, right? Like, I was this person who this at this university, and all these people cheer for you, and now you're not that person anymore. So me personally, I dealt with a lot of depression. I had a lot of anger issues. And people look at me and don't even think I had anger issues because I'm always smiling and calm, but it was like how I reacted to things were bad. Breaking walls, breaking TVs, emotional. And it takes years to get over that because you're trying to deal with, finding yourself. I didn't go to college to go to college. Even though I graduated from college, I wanted to go to college like all the other athletes to make it professional. College was something I needed to do to get to that spot. So when you see other people who go to college, I want to be an accountant, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, and they're coming out and they're doing their jobs. Now you're pretty much starting from scratch after college. So after you leave college, most athletes say, all right, now what do I want to do with my life? And that you didn't take advantage of in college because you put all your hard work, effort into this sport, right? The day of a college athlete is you wake up at 5 a.m., you got workouts at 6 a.m., you got maybe practice, then you got film study, then you got to go to class 3 times, you got to do film study, then you got to practice again, and then you can't do your homework until like 9:30, 10 p.m. at night, and then you do it again the next day. And that's all you're trained to do. To this day, I cannot stand still because I'm like almost programmed to always have to
Right.
do something. So I mean, it's hard for a lot of athletes, and a lot of us find out later about what like our place in this world because we were used to being, which annoys me a lot too, with people who don't take advantage of their opportunity. Like people who go to the NFL or NBA and then they blow it after a year because of something that has nothing to do with the sport. Like that annoys me more than anything. You've practiced your whole life for this moment
Right.
to all of a
Yeah.
sudden get one check and then you make it Dwayne Haskins, whatever. Like you go into the clubs, you doing all the dumb stuff, you
Yeah.
get kicked out. And it's like, well, what's that for? So it's a big thing in this country that nobody talks about. Mental health. As far as like Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka, I'm actually glad they did that because you're right. Like everybody said it. Like my cousin was saying, it's about ownership. Fans think they own you.
Yeah.
They think they own you, and I will always tell fans, you don't own anybody for two reasons. You don't own anybody, and you're not as important as you think you are. Because if you're important as you think you are, then the away team would never win. All right, if
Right.
you're that important. And the second thing, they don't need you because I've been to pirate games and there's nobody there, and they're still getting paid. So it's like you're not as important as you think you are, but they think
That's
they are.
true.
They
Yeah.
really think they mean. Yeah, it's fun. There's always an additional energy when the fan is there, and you get. But fans, I've seen the home team lose all
Plenty
the
of
time.
times. Yeah.
So it's not like you're this. So like they think that, and I've been to a lot of games where there's nobody. I've been to Detroit Piston games before. Ben Wallace and them won championships, and there's probably like 30 people in our stands,
Right.
and they still got paid. All right, they don't. The Pirates will. The people of Pittsburgh hate the Pirates because the Pirate owner don't care
Yeah.
that nobody goes to the games and he's still getting paid. All right, they get
Yeah.
money off of TV. People, they don't get money. This ain't a comedy show where ticket sales. This ain't that. They get money off of TV and advertising.
Yep. Yes, they
So
do.
once fans realize you're not as important, they just played a whole season with no fans in the stands, and it went well.
Yep.
So like, as long as we start realizing we're not as important as we think we are, then maybe athletes can live regular lives and do their job with that is just like you do your job. So
So let me say this before we close up. There's a book I read this back in I think 2000. It's called Pros and Cons: The Criminals Who Play in the NFL, and it's by Jeff Benedict and Don Yeager, and it relates to what you were just talking about, Jason. And you can, I know, you since you were since day one, since you was born. I remember when you were born, but I remember watching you. You played Pee Wee League. And you became a star instantly in the sports and everything. And you rose in the ranks in junior high school and high school. You also were a star in basketball and everything. And you play these sports all the way to college. And then, if you're lucky, you make it to the NFL. you know. But if you stop at college and don't get to play in the NFL, which most don't, people don't understand. There's only a handful that get to make it to the NFL. There's only 32 teams, and the roster is 53 players on each team, and then the practice squad. So, but you got hundreds of thousands of athletes out there playing, and the same thing in the NBA. The book talks about how a lot of people, once the lights went out, once no more games were there, their life just crashed. And so many of them ended up getting into crime, doing things because they were still addicted to the energy, the attention. Because the women go, the asking for autographs a lot of times go, the touring, the jet planes, the fancy restaurants, a lot of that stuff goes. I remember the 30 for 30 broke was an excellent one. And Leon Cersei, remember he was Miami Hurricanes, Pittsburgh Steelers, and Jaguars All-Pro lineman and everything. Then he's living in a two-bedroom apartment years later, and everything after having all that. And I knew Leon. We would run into each other down there in the Strip District, back in the days. What was it? Rosebuds. We used to hang out down there and everything back in the days. And, so I knew a lot of these guys. And once it stops, people got to imagine, and Jimmy Fingers knows, he played football as well. Your life changes, and so for some of them, I feel sorry because they actually have been set up a lot of times because, like you said, they start out in Pee Wee League and AAU, and they're being treated special, different at a young age, all the way into high school. They're the star athletes and everything. They're getting their grades changed and everything. They're getting special access. They got they knows about and everything, access to vehicles and so forth, and then they go into college and it just gets even bigger. And then all of a sudden all of this stuff stops. Or if you go to the NFL, the paychecks and the women and the fame, and then it stops and it's like, now what? No one prepared them for other aspects of life. Like you said, you went to college to go to the NFL, which is what most of them do. They go to college to go to the NFL, the NBA, etc. And then when you don't make it, or if you make it, and the average player only makes what 2 to 3 years on average in the NFL and the NBA, okay, now what? And so it becomes a whole thing. It's almost not the same, but it's similar to people going to jail and then coming out, and the world is different, and them having to adapt to the everyday life of people. So I just wanted to say that, so people can have a more of a I don't just say sympathy, but an understanding that is not as simple as people think. And then when you talk about the racism that goes on inside the sports, especially with the black athletes, on top of that, there's so many stories. If you ever read that book, it's a great book, even though it was back in '98, but it has a lot of famous players and the stuff they went through. And I remember he was talking about Bam Morris from the Steelers. Remember Bam? And
Oh my gosh.
yeah, and and a lot of other players, even Dennis Green, the coach of the Cardinals and the Minnesota Vikings and everything, and some of the run-ins with the law, but it was because of this conditioning that
Yep.
they are subjected to for decades of their life, some of them their whole life, and then the rug is pulled from up under their feet, just like that.
Because I have to actually say it. There's even the stereotype of racism in that as well, as far as like the black college athlete going to college and playing football. Like you'll hear a lot of people say, well, what are you going to do if you don't make it to the NFL? What are you going to do if you don't make it to the NBA? Like they automatically assume that. Now I worked at a university for 13 years, and I say that same as nobody. There's actually way more students in college that go to college to be doctors. I will never be a doctor. That
Right.
go to college to be a surgeon. That go to college to be a lawyer. And I will never be a lawyer. That just find some major and just do the prereqs to go to medical school and never pass. They never say what you're going to do if you're not going to be a doctor.
Right.
Right? I've never heard that. And
That's a
there's
good point.
never anybody, like they don't say that. They always just say to the athletes, what are you going to do if you're not going to make it to the NFL? And I'm like, well, there's actually a lot of white kids at this university that are in that same situation that's not passing their classes, that are forcing themselves to become doctors, that's never making it there.
Right.
But as far as the athlete, the black athlete, we always make sure everybody talks about how bad it is for us not to make it into the profession we want, when there's double the amount of students at this school who's not making it into the profession they want either. And they started from scratch as well. So I always say that there's not that many doctors
That's
in
a
this
good
country,
point.
but everybody wants to be a doctor.
That's
Well-
an excellent point.
Well, I want to say, I don't know if you got a title for your book. I'm sure you do, but it could be called The Transition, because that's basically, what's happening, from, like you said, everything that you described. Now, to the point of the doctor thing. Now, with being a doctor, you can transition to something else that's, I don't want to say the same in salary, but you can definitely transition what you learn to something else versus football if you don't make it there. So you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think, I still think that's a hell of a point to consider, but I think people look at it like, well, once you don't make it in the NFL, because that's the only pipeline. You don't have like another league or anything like that. That's pretty much it. But if you don't make it as a medical doctor, there are other avenues that you can go. You can be a nurse, for God's sake. There's other things that you could do
Right.
when you have a career.
Yeah, and I think my point with that is just working in higher ed for over a decade, like you'll see a list of students, and out of the 150 I might see that's coming in, 100 of them have pre-med as their major. That's their goal, to be pre-med. And then after a year and a half, 20. So like
They drop off.
they just keep dropping off.
Right.
And those other 100 so that applied are just they're just searching for a major to graduate. Right. They're just trying to be, all right, let me just do communications. Right. Because now it's time. Now I have
Right,
to
yeah.
graduate. My
That's
parents ain't
organic
gonna finish
chemistry.
this if I don't graduate in 4 years. So like that's what I mean by that. It's like, yeah, if you were to major in this major and in a medical or health field, I say, not necessarily doctor, but hey, I want to be pre-med, but I'm doing this major, I'm doing well to get medical school, but I have these classes that can keep me in the health field. That's different than 100 some students say, I want to be a doctor, and then the grades are so poor at them, you're just knocking off, and then you're just being whatever you can just to graduate, right? Nobody talks about those students,
And I
right?
think there's a perception issue there too, in that athletes are considered stupid.
Yes.
So, and I think that's the other point of it is that, so, well, if you don't do this, what else are you going to do if you don't make it to the NBA or the NFL? Because you're really not smart enough to do something else, because you're relying on your physical abilities and, that other people don't have to get you where you are, not on your brains. Jimmy Fingers, you wanted to say something?
I think that notion that athletes are stupid is actually something that a lot of ownership relies on, and that they still hold that as the standpoint that these are just physical commodities, no intellect, just stupid, and so it goes back to our points of the conversation. When they speak up, when they discuss things, when they show other perspectives, contrary to that stupid standpoint, that stupid positioning that people have of them, it's very frustrating to white America, the white men. Like, you're supposed to be that athlete that is stupid and doesn't think well and just plays sports. And it's a really dumb thing because, for example, Jason, you play football, I play football. That playbook, that joker is a textbook that you got to learn. You can't be dumb and learn that thing. You cannot be dumb and learn that
thing. You cannot be dumb and learn that thing.
You played the defensive backfield. The things you had to read and understand. I played the offensive defensive line. The schemes you got to know, the calls you got to make. You cannot be dumb and handle that. But for some reason, the understanding is that athletes are stupid and or mentally limited.
Yep.
And so as soon as they step away, move the narrative away from that by speaking on something or showing some thought or making a better decision than just taking whatever is told to them, such as I need a mental break or I'm not going back in this game because you're going to destroy my knee or whatever the decision is, it becomes a huge frustration point. And it's pretty much through everything. I can't just say it's just athletics. It's just black people in general dealing with white men, white America. That's their thought process. But it's heavily shown in athletics.
Just so people know how college, like just defense is, to learn a defense in college, every week you have to, what they say, game plan for the next team. And this is how game planning goes. You get a packet this big on a team. They tell you every formation. They say 80% of the time in this formation is run, 30% of the time in this formation is pass. When the tight end's on this formation, it's 90% run. When the tight end lines up on this formation, it's 90% whatever. Anytime there's this formation, it's 50% pass, 50% run. They run this play out of this formation. They run these plays out of this formation. This is this package. This is this package. These are the plays they run. Here it is. Whenever the tight end goes in motion, now it's 60% pass. Now it's 40%. You have to know that each week for each different team. When the play, so they want you to know, and they quiz you. So like when it's Friday night and you're playing on Saturday, they give you a packet this thick. They say, here's the questions. How much percentage of run is in this formation? Line this up. What plays did they run out of this formation? What defense did we run when they call this? What did we check to when they call this? What did we check? And you have to know this right when they hit the snap, right before the ball snap. Right? So there's like a play of me one time. We were playing a game and the receiver went in motion. You saw me hauling with the receiver because at that point I already knew what they were playing and I made the tackle. But that's because it has to, like, people think it's just people just running and just hitting and just everybody just going like this and just hitting each other. Yeah, no, it's like so much thinking that's happening right before. And I feel like what they're talking about, like why players don't like stand up. I feel like owners treat players like, what's that movie with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd changing places?
Trading places.
We can take the poorest person,
right?
Make them rich. Look how they act now when we make them rich, right? But know your place, right? Because we can make you poor again.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying.
So we should advocate that if you finish 4 years of playing ball, you might need to get a separate degree.
Right.
like a
Right.
critical thinking degree or something like that.
Great
You
point.
know,
Something tangible on paper. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
you know what I'm
That's
saying?
an excellent point.
Yeah, yeah. The way you break it down, and two, to the other point you was making about how we don't question people that's pursuing the more academic side. We don't ask. I'm assuming a lot of professors don't ask, "What if you don't make it? What if you don't pass my class? What if you don't pass the bar? What if you don't this, that, and the third?" I'm sure people don't ask that too often. The way, like you were saying, they question athletes about the same thing.
Yeah. Excellent point. Excellent point. Um, breaking news for those who do not know. Once again, this is the Love Lounge Radio Show. I'm DJ One Love, and I've been doing my show for 15 years. But I broadcast right here in the Washington D.C. area, the DMV, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia area. Demetrius has been in part of my show since the beginning. Same with DJ Jimmy Fingers. They came on right after my first year. Um, but I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I say that take the good and the bad with it. Uh, and I'm proud of where I come from and everything. But yo, shout out to Ed Gainey being the first black mayor in Pittsburgh. He just won. Breaking news. Shout out to Modex for posting that information. That's a big deal for a city like Pittsburgh. Um, Black man, black mayor in a city like Pittsburgh, that's a big deal because we just talked about it earlier. The racial divide in Pittsburgh is very thick, just like it is in some other cities. Boston is the only one I know up north that is worse, and that might be the worst in the country, honestly. But shout out to Mayor Ed Gainey, without a doubt. Let me see here. So much love to that, for the brother winning and everything, and hopefully. He can change some things up there because the black community in Pittsburgh definitely needs it. Even though I'm down here, I try to stay in touch with my people back home. It is an extremely racially divided city. I love the brothers and sisters up there. And I love certain communities. There's certain communities, white communities that are really nice, like the Jewish community in Squirrel Hill. But then there are others that are like, whoa, yeah, just extremely racist. And it's like you can cross a certain section and you can feel it in the air. So hopefully he can do some things to help uplift the city as a whole, but especially the black community. Hey, yo, with that being said, I want to close out on this. I want to thank everybody for listening and joining. I want to thank ModX for holding it down, my moderator extraordinaire, and the Twitch squad. I want to thank Dr. Agu. I thank Michael, Calvin Michaels, Demetrius Pitt. And I want to thank DJ Jimmy Fingers for holding it down. And Black Steel, like I said, was helping out with the whole election thing and everything. Had an event to do for providing this platform of digital analog radio. But a special thanks to my cousin, Jason Russell. Jason, if anybody wanted to see anything about you and some of your work that you've done in your comedy and everything, where could they go?
They can just go to my YouTube page, actually, what is my YouTube page? I just go to Instagram, j.russ, JDOTRUSS. You can see that. And also you can go to my YouTube, comedian J Russ.
No
Like I
doubt.
said, some of you guys might know me from Bougie Black Girl.
Mhm.
Things they say. I haven't made one of those. I probably won't make another one of those, but it was a good video, and
It was hilarious.
DC showed me a lot of love when I came out with
Yeah.
Things Bougie Black Girl Say.
No doubt. So yeah, thanks, Jace. Love you, cousin. Keep doing what you're doing. And Jason just had a baby girl not long ago, and she's beautiful. I keep saying looks just like your mama, and everything. But yeah, hats off to you. And he's also engaged. So and I'm gonna be the DJ at their wedding. So it's a
Right.
family affair without a doubt, and
Right.
everything. But keep doing what you're doing. I'm glad to finally have you on the show. Yo, Jace, you can come on the show anytime you want. Anytime
Okay.
you want. Trust me, believe me. The rest of them can tell you, it's open to everybody, unless I have a special guest where I, have an arrangement. Like when I had DJ Spinderella, she didn't want other people on because she was going through the legal stuff with Salt and Pepper. So that's the only reason. She's like, it's not that she was against it, it's just legally she couldn't do that. And so other than that, anybody's allowed to come on the show, man. So any other time if you want to chime in, you part of the family, and now you're part of the Love Lounge family as well. Hey, everybody, look, Be smart. I hope people got out there and voted in your cities that you had the elections. Drink that water, exercise, eat some vitamins. I had some cal earlier. Be smart, man. Social distance. We ain't bad. We ain't there yet. We're getting better, but COVID is still out there doing its thing, and there are other things out there. Keep your head on the swivel, brothers and sisters. Show love and in respect to one another. I talk about race a lot on this show because to me it's the biggest problem in the world, and everything else that is a problem in the world is associated, whether it's climate change or women's rights or anything else. There is a racial component to all of that. Demetrius knows all about that. We talk about it all the time, so that's why I talk about it so much. But I love people of all races, of all creeds, religions, economic backgrounds and everything. So, show love and respect to one another. And we'll see you all next week on DJ One Love. I am out of here. Peace.